Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of the Nebraska statutes, notice of the meeting was given on April 3rd, 2015. The meeting will convene at 6:30 p.m. and visitors may obtain a request to be heard form from staff for any presentation they may have for the meeting. In accordance with policy, the request to be heard forms must be submitted to the Secretary within the first 5 minutes of the board meeting in order to be heard at this meeting. Agenda items are subject to reordering at the discretion of the board president. Please attend the entire meeting to ensure you're able to hear any discussion.
Whatever you want. Whatever you want. I'm up to.
Let's try going to
Thanks, sir. Yep.
What about technology?
What about technology?
right. We trimmed it down a little bit.
Okay. You want this one instead?
Yeah. And it's up there. It's only a handful of things up there.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, man.
Yes. Yep. Okay.
Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of the Nebraska statutes, the next regular meeting of the Board of Education of Douglas County School District 0001 and the Board of Educational Service Unit number 19 will be held Monday, April 20th, 2015 at 6:30 p.m. in the board meeting room of the Teacher Administrative Center, 3215 Cummings Street. The agenda will be kept current and available for public inspection in the office of the Secretary of the Board of Education at the Administrative Building during regular working hours. Pursuant to Section 84-1412 of the Nebraska statutes, the public is hereby informed that a current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted in the board meeting room on the north wall. At this time, we will ask for Boy Scout Troop number 76 to please come forward. No. Okay. Would everyone please stand as we say the Pledge of Allegiance? At this time, Ms. Williams will lead us in the vision and the mission statement.
OPS vision, every student, every day, prepared for success, and our mission, Omaha Public Schools, prepares all students to excel in college, career, and life.
Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Fay.
Here.
Gadding.
Here.
America.
Present.
Scanlon.
Present.
Snow.
Present.
Underwood. Vargas.
Present.
Wayne. Williams.
Present.
8 present.
Thank you. At this time, I will take a motion to excuse Mrs. Underwood.
I move to excuse Mrs. Underwood.
Is there a
from this
second?
meeting.
Second.
So there's a motion to excuse Mrs. Underwood by Ms. Merica and a second by Ms. Williams. Roll call, please.
Fay.
Aye.
Gadding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
8 aye.
Motion carries. At this time, we'll turn it over to Mr. Andrews.
Thank you, Madam President. We are pleased to have 2 school spotlights tonight. First, our congratulations go out to Brooke Bybee of Joslyn Elementary. You might have read about her on the front page of the World Herald not long ago. She took first place in the Midwest Spelling Bee back in March, and now she is set to represent Western Iowa and the entire state of Nebraska at the Scripps Spelling Bee, the National Spelling Bee, in Washington, D.C. later on this spring. She's here with her family and her administrator tonight. Would you please join me in welcoming them to the podium?
Good evening to everyone. Excuse my voice. B-R-O-O-K-E. I'm so proud to introduce you to Brooke Bybee. We are so proud, not just on behalf of Joslyn Elementary School, but also for our entire district, the Omaha Public Schools, and also for Nebraska and parts of Iowa. We couldn't send a better representative to represent us. We are so proud of you. Congratulations, and we're all here to support you. And Brooke has brought along some artifacts with you. Brooke, come on over. To share with you tonight, she has her spelling bee plaque. Very cool. Many, many other certificates with her tonight. Share. And also with me tonight are her 2 teachers that have also been working with her. And on behalf of Joslyn and all of her teachers, we wish her good luck. And again, we are so very proud of her and her family. She's going to do a great GREAT job.
Brooke, we would like you to come around and shake all of our hands. This is pretty exciting to have a Nebraska state winner, except for these guys are sick, so we'll let you pass on them.
Our thanks again to Brooke and her family for being here tonight, and the best of luck to her in Washington, D.C. later this spring. And now we salute OPS state wrestling champions. Gentlemen, if you'd please stand as I call your name before you come up here. John Feeney from Northwest, Connor Fox from Burke, Ty Jackson from North, and Andrew Pastillo from Burke. They all finished first in their respective weight classes at the state championships recently. And adding to those accomplishments is this fact: OPS had more individual state wrestling champions in 2015 than any other metro district. Please join me in welcoming all of them to the front. Whoever would like to speak first, go right ahead.
I'd just like to thank OPS for the opportunity to be here with these young men. I think they represented OPS, Burke High School, very well down at the state meet, as all 4 of them did. It's just great to sit there as a coach and watch your other OPS schools do well down there, and I thought we had a great showing through OPS at the state tournament. And congratulations to the coaches and the wrestlers that are here.
I'd also like to thank the board and OPS for this opportunity to come down. Ty Jackson, the wrestler from Omaha North, is a 2-time state champion, which is something that we're very proud of. His work ethic, as well as all these guys up here, and the coach's work ethic really is remarkable, and these achievements are remarkable. So thanks for allowing us some time, and thanks for the congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, board. Clinton Childs, head wrestling coach, Omaha Northwest. Like to let everybody know that we crowned our first state champion in 26 years at that high school. John Feeney at 120. Also, the 2 coaches behind me. It's really good to see that OPS is doing well at the state wrestling tournament. One of these days, we may crown all 14 weight classes with OPS kids. That'll be awesome. Thanks. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And guys, why don't you come around and shake our hands or fist pump, however it works.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, if you come on up. Thank you. One more round of applause for them, folks.
It's great to see so many from 3 different schools, so how exciting that we can put you all together and give you that congratulations. At this time, we'll move on to board and superintendent communications, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Evans for his report.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I want to start off with at each of the board members' seat, you have a copy of the 2014 Kids Count Nebraska report. In that report, you'll find a lot of the data in reference to not only our students, but also our community in relationship to economic conditions, early childhood conditions, health conditions, a lot of factors that impact our schools, and a lot of factors that we know we're working on with community groups and community leadership to help answer. The reality is schools can do a lot, and we do a lot, but without our community partners, the kinds of issues that are addressed in this book really can't be really taken care of. Next, I'd like to mention that just a reminder to the board that as we prepare for this summer, your calendars are going to really fill up. We've got some major activities that we've not been a part of in the past. We've got our first ever principal retreat that will happen in June. We've got our new principals retreat, a 2-day event. That'll be the first time ever in July. We have a 3L conference, Leaders Leading Leaders, with our EDs highlighting the entire city of Omaha. In fact, we're going to be hosting the Midwest region. We'll have leaders from across school districts in the Midwest region right here in Omaha, and I believe we're going to have some representation from Ed Week and possibly the New York Leadership Academy as well. So I want to thank all the staff members, community folks that have been a part of putting those events together. You'll hear more in the future, but I want to make sure you start to get some of those activities on your calendars. Also, just wanted to give some updates to the school board. We are still working on preparing some data, looking at 3rd grade reading scores and promotion. I know that Mr. Scanlon had asked about that earlier. That's still being put together, and actually we're going to add to that with some of our screening tools that we use for early childhood and kindergarten, because there's also a correlation that we want to bring to the table on that as well. Also wanted to give special thanks for the Green Schools Award. Dr. Turnquist, your staff was recently recognized, I believe on Channel 7 as well as in the Omaha World Herald, for the work you've done on the Green School, so we appreciate that work. And lastly, I wanted to mention that the Standards-Based Grading Committee has now been formed. I want to thank OEA for giving us 5 members, as well as 5 additional teachers from around the district. We've got some building administrators, some district office staff, and if the board has an interest in providing 2 names to us, we'd be happy to have 2 board members to serve as well. But we hope to have that group meeting before the end of this month as we look at the data there. Probably one of the things that we're also excited about is that we've got the consultant from Nebraska Department of Education, Erica Volker, will be our facilitator for this event. She's from Partnerships for Innovation, but because we're a part of Nebraska's Department of Ed, we actually get her for no cost. So she's going to be leading this work, and we appreciate that as we continue to develop new and improved ways of looking at how we assess student growth. And lastly, I'm just going to ask the board and our community to reach out to the Tyrus Harris family. As many of you know, he was in a tragic shooting, and he's still in our hospital right across the street, but he is in stable condition, so I did want to report that, and we're very hopeful for that North High senior to have a full recovery, so we appreciate your thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Are there any board members who would like to share information at this time? Ms. Fay?
Yes, I went to this is Dancing Classrooms culminating event season, so there's a lot of them going on, and I was able to make it to one at Central High School where they do Dancing Classrooms with the ACP class, and I think it was last week. So this is maybe the 5th year that they've done Dancing Classrooms at Central with the ACP students, and it's just a really positive, affirming event. It's a lot of fun. At the end, they ask you to dance. So if you ever go to a Dancing Classrooms culminating event, be prepared to dance. Coming up are the Colors of the Rainbow team matches, and the board all got information about that, and they're an hour long, and they're at Lewis and Clark now while there's things going on in the TAC auditorium. So there's an 8th grade and a 5th grade competition. They'll be held at Lewis and Clark just prior to a board meeting, so if you go at 5, you should be done by 6 and be able to make it here in plenty of time for the board meeting. But it's a great positive event to go and see the kids treat each other like ladies and gentlemen, and just shake what their mama gave them, as they say in Dancing Classrooms.
Anyone else? Ms. Merica?
I echo the go to Dancing Classrooms because it is amazing. I apologize. I have a couple things since I was not able to be at the last board meeting, but I wanted to give an update because at the last meeting I had requested that people reach out to me about Read Across America Week, and I'm happy to report that I was able to go read 2 different classes at Beals, Gomez Heritage, Gateway, Oak Valley, and Ashland Park Robbins. So it was very exciting and fun to get in and talk with kids, not just about the books that we were reading, but what the school board does and about running for office, since I read to a lot of 4th graders and they're learning about elections and government. Last week I had the opportunity with a couple of district representatives to go to a parent meeting at Bryan High, and we talked a little bit about the bond issue, ways they can get involved and be part of the process for things that will be going on at the high school. And then on Saturday, actually, Mrs. Fay and I were both at the opening for the Artist to Teacher to Artist art show that's currently going on down at Hot Shots. And it's basically, I think a lot of times we forget that our art teachers in our school aren't just teachers, they're artists. And so they have a passion and they have a talent for art. And they have an art show every year where they're displaying pieces of work that they've made, and it is just truly remarkable, and we have some incredibly talented teachers working in our district. And I believe that is going on through April 25th. I'm getting a nod, so I'm correct. So I encourage you, if you have a chance, to stop down at Hot Shops and see our teachers' amazing work.
Mr. Vargas?
Thank you very much. Apologies, I'm a little sick today. A couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity to attend the Awesome Awards at Benson High, honoring our middle school African-American students for academic achievement accolades that demonstrated this year. It was a fantastic event, so just kudos to the district and to the parents and the families and the students for their tremendous work ethic and continued emphasis on academics. It's no easy task, and seeing The teachers and staff there supporting students was fantastic. It was a packed crowd, and everybody it was just a really happy day, happy weekend. So that was an honor to be there. Thank you.
Okay. If there's anyone else, otherwise I'll give several items. The first item that I want to talk about is congratulations to Mrs. Underwood on the birth of her son a week ago tomorrow, so last Tuesday. Simon James was born last Tuesday, 8 pounds, 13 ounces, so a big young man he is already. So we want to say congratulations to her and wish them the best as they're recovering and getting into a new routine at their house. I had the opportunity to attend the 7th and 8th grade Book Blasters competition, which was very fun. It's always interesting to see how these kids have read all these books and memorized all these minute details. So that was a fun event. And I also had the opportunity to attend Super Quiz for the 7th and 8th graders as well. So congratulations to all of them and to the winners of those events. Just as a reminder to the public, the Human Growth and Development meeting will be tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. in this room. And so just a reminder to everyone to have the opportunity to attend that. And we've finished up the student assignment plan meetings. There were 5 of them, so those are all wrapped up. And the committee will be reconvening to discuss the results of those meetings. And I think with that, that's it. So if no one else has comments, we will move on to public comment and recognition. And the first public comment is from Tani Markison. And so please state your name, spelling of your last name, and your address, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. Mr. Ray will let you know when you have 1 minute left and 30 seconds left.
Tawny Markison, 6926 Pinckney Street. I just moved, so excuse me. Again, my name is Tawny Markison, and I'm here in support of the 75 North project that's on your agenda tonight. As a parent of children at Wilson Focus School, I've seen the benefit of extended day and extended year education. In addition, as a young professional with a family whose work life, children's activities, and social life is focused around the Highlander area, it's the type of place where I'd really like to live if the schools in the area were showing that they were on the right track. The community is also very supportive of OPS being innovative and forward-thinking in their quest to provide all students with quality education. And the model that 75 North provides is just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next comment is from Thomas Warren Sr. And again, please state your name, spell your last name, your address, and then you have 5 minutes to speak.
Good evening, President Goding, members of the board, Superintendent Evans, and staff. My name is Thomas Warren, last name W-A-R-R-E-N. I currently serve as President and Chief Executive Officer at the Urban League of Nebraska, and also serve as Chairman of the Board of Directors at 75 North. You'll hear the presentation tonight. I'm here in support of the proposal at the Urban League in Nebraska. We administer programs in education, youth development, employment and career services, and violence prevention. We are also a traditional civil rights organization in that we engage in advocacy around the issues of social justice, child welfare reform, juvenile justice reform, and education reform. This opportunity with 75 North, I would tell you as a resident who was born and raised here in North Omaha, someone who has worked in North Omaha my entire adult life, I will tell you that this is the most significant capital investment that I can recall in my lifetime. This is an opportunity for the students here at Howard Kennedy Elementary School. This investment not only in terms of resources and expertise, will lead to improvements in academic outcomes and achievement. It is a significant, comprehensive strategy. I have had an opportunity to be exposed to the purpose-built model. It is a very comprehensive strategy that includes the components of housing, of health, and safety. But the education component is probably the most critical component. And I know what is being proposed at Howard Kennedy it represents a fundamental change, and change isn't easy. I can tell you that I took over a struggling organization, and I know what it takes to turn things around. The organization has to be reconstituted. There has to be a plan. There has to be a willingness to execute the strategy. And more importantly, there has to be the resources necessary in order to carry the plan out. And I will tell you that it appears as if this community has really come around and supported this effort. It represents a significant investment in the life chances of our students, and I feel that an investment in their future will be immeasurable. And so on behalf of the Board of Directors, we appreciate your consideration of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael Williams. Please state your name and spell your last name and your address, and then you have 5 minutes.
Okay. Good evening to the board and to each of you. My name is Michael Williams, W-I-L-L-I-A-M-S, 4932 Ohio Street, 68104. I come this evening to congratulate the district, Superintendent Evans, Dr. Turnquist, Jacobs Company, Gabrielle Mack, Letha Gillespie, Mark Summers, Jeremy Cobb, Cheryl, and the crew on the progress of the bond program, especially the economic inclusion portion of that. Although many entities in Omaha have projects pending, OPS is the cutting edge, as I see it, of this inclusion, in spite of having had to start from scratch. And your efforts have spurred genuine excitement and guarded hope for economic participation going forward. We at IMA, Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, which I'm president of, voted to support economic inclusion in September of last year and have been watching it closely. I do have a suggestion. That is having Jacobs be responsible for the main being main counsel to an OPS inclusion program director may not be the best idea. As great as Jacobs is, it is unreasonable to have Jacobs be responsible for technical aspects of the project, guaranteed maximum price requirements and meeting project schedule requirements and so forth, while at the same time having to execute a successful economic inclusion program. The two are kind of exclusive. And so we encourage the board to hire an independent consulting firm whose only job is to ensure inclusion during the 4-year term of the bond. During that time, they could train a local staff person who could serve as an economic inclusion program director in the future for sustainability. This would avoid and assure strong credibility, accessibility, and transparency, which you all are already on the road toward. So there's much to the idea that I have, and I'll be reaching out to board members. I've had a chance to talk to a couple of you already, but I'll reach out to board members in regard to this going forward. So you all have a good night.
Thank you very much. Then we have Willie Barney. You probably know the routines. Your spelling of your last name and your address, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. Willie Barney, 12333 Cummings Street, and then also Empowerment Network, 105 North 31st Avenue. I want to there's so many things on the agenda tonight that I just want to briefly touch on and then get to the other reason I'm here. But as Pastor Williams just mentioned, on behalf of the Empowerment Network and a number of other partners, and then personally, the last few months observing and taking part in various meetings with the Jacobs team, specifically Gletha and Gabrielle and the others, their willingness to come out into the community and engage with contractors, with residents, and answer questions has been just one of the best I've ever seen as far as interaction. The plan, the comprehensive nature of it, very impressed with the work that we've seen so far. And as Pastor Williams said, we're all very interested and engaged with this. OPS truly is in a leadership position when it comes to this. And we want to thank the board for making this a top priority with what you're doing, economic inclusion. I was quoted in the presentation. I just want to emphasize how important what you're doing is to this whole city. When we talk about addressing poverty, when we talk about addressing unemployment, it has to be intentional, it has to be transparent, and you are doing that with that team that is here with Jacobs. As Pastor Williams said, our goal is not only with this bond, but the other work that Dr. Turnquist is leading. It's exciting to see that you're looking at policies as the whole district, with employment, with contracting, opportunities for our youth, so we're really encouraged by the work you're doing in that particular area. I'm also just very excited about the vote that you had last month on the Benson initiative. Career education has been a top priority within the community, specifically polling 3,000 plus adults, 2,000 plus kids, having opportunities to work, get dual credit, and to see that project moving forward with focus on business and entrepreneurship, health, and construction at Benson is one of the most exciting things happening in the city right now. In addition to that, a couple months ago, we were excited to have Lisa Utterbeck and a couple of other principals from OPS come to our community meeting and present best practices from principals that are very high-performing principals. I know you hear a lot of negatives sometimes, but to hear those principals talk about the exceptional things that are happening at their schools and district-wide was very encouraging, very engaging for the community. So we do really want to celebrate the path that you're on. What I would continue to challenge and always push, I think I've been here 4 or 5 times talking about the focus school, dual language, extended day, extended year, everything that we've seen on national best practices from the Harlem Children's Zone to the schools across the country, and even in your own schools, the extended day, extended year, engaging of parents, parental engagement, community engagement, top-level principals, top-level teachers, all of those various components. We all know they're necessary to move us forward, and I just encourage the board to continue pressing forward with a sense of urgency. We have a lot more kids, thousands of kids out here that deserve that high quality, high education that we know that you can do. We just challenge you to do it at an accelerated rate. The last thing that I do want to touch on is the 75 North initiative, and just want to support the work that's going on and will be going on at Kennedy. We had an opportunity to visit the purpose-built model in Atlanta probably 4 or 5 years ago. We have seen with great interest they continue to press forward. We are great partners with Tom Warren, who's the board of that organization, have been more and more engaged with Othello and the work that he's doing to engage the neighborhood and the schools. And we are very, very supportive of this model being implemented at Kennedy with all sense of urgency, all sense of urgency. And hopefully, very quickly after that, seeing similar models implemented at other schools in North and South Omaha and other schools that have had challenges. 1 minute? All right, thank you. So again, we just really support the work that's going on with the bond, with the Benson initiative, and a number of other projects that are going on at OPS right now. But really want to, again, put the word out there that this focus school model of extended day, extended year, and then this innovative model that's being brought forth with the 75 North project is really, it's very needed in our city. So please, please, please move that forward with a sense of urgency so that we can not just be at Kennedy, but we can keep moving this process forward with real, true innovation that this district has already shown its ability to do. We're just asking again, and I keep saying it, a sense of urgency. There are lots of kids, lots of parents and teachers and others that want to see these things move forward, so let's make it happen. Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on your progress.
Thank you very much. I think that's it for public comment. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. And we've had a board member request that we discuss one of the claims items, legal, in closed session. So I've already moved claims A out of consent. And so we'll have that discussion later. And then also a request from a board member to move the Boys and Girls Club letter of interest off. And so that moved from I-11 to J2D, and the claims A moved to J2C. So with that, I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda items.
So moved.
So motion by Mr. Wayne.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Fay to approve the consent agenda items that are before us. Any abstentions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Gadding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Vargas.
Aye.
Wayne.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Fay.
Aye.
8-0.
Motion carries. Moving on to information items. First information item is J1A, Jacobs Bond update. Oh, and Mr. Evans is going to kick that off. Is that right? I guess so.
Well, as Mr. Leffler's coming up there, I guess just a word of, congratulations to our finance team. And I know we've shared this with our school board, but the interest rate for our school bonds is 3.46, I believe, percent.
3.461.
461.
I take it out 4 more decimals if you need.
Oh, okay, okay. But we were very pleased with that. Our rating is very high, and that's very important for us to keep that bond rating high. We've been fortunate to keep it high historically in this district, and that's our goal as we head down the road for the 2 additional tranches that will occur later on. But I want to thank our team that was a part of that process. I think that's going to be helpful down the road as we look at future bond issues too, knowing that we can get the highest bond rating possible and the lowest interest rate possible. So thank you for your work on that.
Members of the board, administration, again, Bruce Leffler, Meritus Investment Corp. I'll do the bond update, then we'll let the Jacobs do the Jacobs bond update from that standpoint. But the information that we provided for today is a summary of the bid on the OPS bonds that was handled on March 18th. Oops, there we go. I just want to go through a quick little timetable so you can see where we have gone. On March 18th, we had a public sale of $141 million of general obligation bonds for Omaha Public Schools. During that process, which took place between 10:30 and 10:45 on Central Time, we had 5 different bidders that were active in the bidding process over that 15-minute period of time, and during that period of time, those 5 bidders put in 13 separate bids as that process goes through. Just as a reminder, what happens is electronically when a firm submits its bid, it gets a kickback that says you're not the low bid. It doesn't tell you where you land, but it just says you're not low. So these firms have the opportunity to resubmit bids and try to save some of their interest rates off. So we had 5 very competitive bids. J.P. Morgan was the winning bidder at a true interest cost to the district with 3.1489636. Okay, let's go at decimal points. We then did the math, I guess, if you want to call it that, and the verification that the winning bid was confirmed. We got the award signed by the board president superintendent around noon of that March 18th. On March 19th, J.P. Morgan deposited a good faith deposit of $1.41 million to U.S. Bank, who's a custodial agent, for their good faith on the bid on those bonds, holding until the settlement date on April 8th. We had I have it down as April 7th, but tonight we had the bond attorneys were here, board officers signed the closing documents for the series 2015 bonds, and on April 8th, on Wednesday, we will wire transfer, or there'll be a wire transfer from J.P. Morgan of $152,920,439.54 proceeds transferred to the district's construction fund. During the bid process, we actually had 7 firms that were signed up prepared to submit bids on it. 2 apparently chose not to submit their bids as time went on. I would go to the second page here. This is a printout of the observation report on the bids. You'll see the firm J.P. Morgan was the winning bid at the TIC of the 3.41. The cover bid, which would be the next closest bid to Wells Fargo Bank of 3.427, so less than 1 basis point separated those 2 folks on that bid. So that's very competitive. And you'll see that the 5 bids went out to Bank of America Merrill Lynch at the 3.61%. Over a 15-minute period of time on the just an entering process to go through, to the extent that we were about 5 or 6 minutes in the bid and we hadn't seen one yet. But as with any auction, you see it all comes in the last minute. So within the last about 8 minutes, we got those 13 bids on those outstanding bonds for the district. Let me see. One other thing I guess I wanted to point out. Through the process here, excuse me, you'll note that through the column here, it shows the TIC, it shows the gross interest, and then it shows the discounted premium, and that's how the bonds were priced. You'll see there was a lot of premium being bought into these bonds. I'll show you the effect of that premium on the next page, but you'll see that the premium being offered on the bonds was from a low of $8.3 million on $141 million of the bonds to the $20 million for Merrill Lynch. The point being is this is how, and I'll show you on the next page here, this is how we sell $141 million or offer $41 million of bonds for sale and end up with almost $153 million worth of bond proceeds. This is the actual bid that was submitted by J.P. Morgan. You'll see that the number of bonds are certainly in thousands, so we go from 5.9 million in 2024, which is the first maturity on these bonds, out through 12/15 of 2040. The principal $11,145,000. The coupon is the interest rate that was bid by the J.P. Morgan. You'll see we have 5% coupons. The true price or basis in that next column is the actual interest rate that was being effective to the school district. So we go from 2.18 in 2024 out to 3.35% in 2040. The computed price or yield is what the company was paying. So as an example, on 2024, where you see a 124.5% premium, that means for a $100 bond, they were paying $124.50. So that's how the premium comes out. So the actual proceeds of that $141 million are going to come out to be about $153 million worth of proceeds to the school district. The effect of paying $141 million at those coupon rates, you'll see at that 5% and 4% interest rates. The effect of repaying $141 million at those coupon rates, but getting $153 million worth of cash to use, is where you make the calculation to the effective yield of the 3.41%. So that is the true borrowing cost, true interest cost of the district. To the extent of, I would tell you from the standpoint of, did the school district get a good deal in the marketplace or a semi-good deal in the marketplace? About a week later, J.P. Morgan was still trying to sell some of the bonds that they had bought, which tells me, and I'll tell you, means that those interest rates weren't too high. Because if the interest rates had been on those too high, you don't want your bonds to sell out in 5 minutes. That means the interest rate's too high. Now, if the interest rate's too low, it takes you a little bit more time to get the bonds sold. So the market was telling J.P. Morgan that they may be a little aggressive on the interest rates that they gave to you. Now, that's their problem. That's not your problem, because they guaranteed the interest rate to this district at 3.41. So at Wednesday of this week, we'll be facilitating the transfer of the $152,900,000 worth of bond proceeds to the school district construction fund. I guess I would stop there to see if there's any questions from the board.
Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
I'm kind of sandwiched in between 2 other bond topics of discussion, so I'm going to provide just a brief update on the bond program's project statuses. So we've been to the board several times over the last few months for different types of project awards. Most of them, or all of them, have been in the design arena for professional services. We are now transitioning over into some construction procurement. So there are several projects that are out for bid. Blackburn, Pecott, Prairie Wind, and Fullerton are all part of a bid package. Mars Middle's technology package is also out for bid. And then Morton and Lewis and Clark are also out for bid. So we've been doing a lot of design work on the Quick Start projects, and we're transitioning into the construction phase, or the procurement of construction for those projects. Another one to note in Quick Start is Ponca Elementary. And I know that our project manager, Jeremy Cobb, has been engaging with the selection committee. If you recall, that's a professional services, so they go through a similar selection process as the design consultants do. I believe all that information's coming in, and next week they'll sit through about a half a day of interviews with the 3 highest ranking firms based on the evaluations. So that's for Ponca. Their process is different because we're using the construction manager at risk method versus a hard bid or low price methodology. The other components that we're still really heavily focused on for the Group 1 and Group 2 projects is the Educational Specification Committee process. So we haven't brought any Group 1 projects forward for approval of the Ed Spec. Those meetings are ongoing. There's all kinds of them happening at really any point in time. So if you're interested in participating or hearing about those, let Dr. Turnquist know, or Mr. Ray, and we can get you set up to attend some of those discussions. But that process for Group 1 and Group 2 will carry on for about another month to 6 weeks, and then we'll be back to the board to get those educational specification documents approved, and then we'll move forward into the design process. The only other thing I'll mention is Group 3, which is a small grouping of projects that will occur next summer. So we're really starting early on the design, procurement, and selection of those. We'll be issuing RFPs for design services within the month, and then we'll start the design process on those projects as well. So we'll have 20 to 25 projects, whether they're in construction or design, really going simultaneous. And the way that the pace of a bond program, because of the dollars and the time frame, they really start kind of working in parallel, and then there's some series connections as well, but they all really start stacking on top of each other. So we're trying to make sure we hit all of our board dates and our bids and all of those components, because when things get off kilter, it can be difficult to kind of realign because there's such a waterfall effect. So I just wanted to provide a quick update. Was there any questions kind of related to project? Sure.
Just a quick question. Is everything that you gave, could you give that to us in writing?
Yeah,
or at least
absolutely.
To me?
Yep. I can. Yep. I get it to Matt and he'll get it distributed.
Thank you.
No problem. Anything else? Otherwise,
Any other
Matt
questions? Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Summers. I've just come to speak about an issue associated with repurposing of Saratoga. In collaboration with staff from District Operational Services, the EDs of School Support, the Secretary of the Board, Human Resources, and Curriculum and Instruction, we have identified a concern with the recommendation that Saratoga students be moved to Druid Hill following the repurposing of Saratoga for use as ILP in the 17-18 school year. Justifications for this concern are threefold. One, placing as many as 165 students into Druid Hill would put the school at a 109% capacity. This would preclude academy class sizes being maintained. Two, integrating Saratoga students into Druid Hill would result in nearly all Saratoga students having to cross at least one major street, and in many instances, two. Lastly, integrating Saratoga students into Druid Hill would create a highly unusual attendance boundary. It would be J-shaped to a certain extent. Our recommendations are threefold as well, and I'll be referring to a map that is attached to these documents. I'll bring it up on the board here. It should be noted with this map that these are just tentative boundary changes. Any formal boundary changes would require some more work, and we'll be back to you for those approvals. But I'll be referencing this map very briefly. Our recommendation is to, one, place the northern half of the Saratoga home attendance area, the area colored in blue on the attachment, into Skinner. This would bring the utilization of Skinner up to a maximum of 86%, that number dependent on how many students truly transition there and don't opt to utilize the student assignment plan and attend another school, and the number of pre-K classrooms transition to that building. Additionally, students north of Ames and east of 75 would be eligible for home attendance area transportation, thus avoiding any dangers on their route to school. Our second recommendation would be to place the southern half of the Saratoga home attendance area, the area colored in green, into the Lothrop home attendance area. This would bring Lothrop's utilization up to a maximum of 88% and would avoid as well having students cross major intersections if walking to Lothrop. Our third recommendation relates only to those students in the green area, thus assigned to Lothrop, who are in the 5th or 6th grade. In that, Lothrop is a K-4 building. So we would recommend that those students either attend King Science, which is an area already shared with that area, or if there are some concerns with parents regarding their student attending a middle school environment, that those students be given the option to Skinner as well to follow their peers to that school, their peers being in that northern half of the attendance area. We've attached a communication plan as well, our tentative plan for how we'll communicate to staff and parents. Parents and staff would both be kept appraised of the progress towards the repurposing of Saratoga, and parents and staff would both have numerous voice opportunities in this process and would be connected with knowledgeable district staff to help in their transition to their new opportunity. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Mrs. Fay.
So I just want you to catch me up a little bit, and I apologize if I missed something along the way. So why is the ILP moving out of the old Druid Hill building?
I know that was on the bond.
Well, but on the facilities plan that's on the website, we actually have that ILP moving to Kellam and Parrish moving to Saratoga. So I guess I was just starting backwards one. So are we tearing down the old Druid Hill? We're using it for...
I don't believe that's the case. I'm going to defer to the committee that worked on this, but
So I guess it's what's happening to the old Druid Hill, and maybe we're using it, but I'll let you tell me. And then why the switch from the ILP to Saratoga instead of over at Kellam, and then what's going to happen to Parrish? So it's a three-part question.
Dr. Turnquist.
The plan that is in the capital plan that has been modified was modified at the request of curriculum and instruction, so I would defer to them to explain those. And some of it has to do with the enrollment size for those programs, but I would defer to Dr. Kerberg to respond to that.
Dr. Kerber.
Yeah, thanks, Mrs. Godding. We talked about in committee, and I want to thank the research department for pulling membership numbers. The Parrish program is much smaller than the integrated learning program, and so the space at Saratoga affords itself more nicely to accommodate the ILP program, and Parrish can fit into a much smaller facility. And so that was a primary consideration. And then, as you know, the old Druid Hill, where ILP currently is one of our older facilities, so it's a much improved location for ILP to be at Saratoga. So it's better use of the space because the additional classrooms could be taken advantage of, and Parrish is a smaller program.
So where is Parrish going to go?
I don't think the committee has talked through that. We've listed several options, but I'd defer to research, but I can tell you that there have been several options listed. And I could run through that from memory, or I could defer to Scott, who was taking minutes, however you'd like that presented.
I'll volunteer to jump in on that one.
Oh, okay. I have one more question then after you
jump. Thank you. One of the committees that we approved through a policy change was the the review committee of specialty schools, and so one of the first elements that will be on the agenda is those programs and where those programs will be placed. So I would look for an update from that committee to the board on some of those specific programs in the facilities plan.
Great, I think I'm on that committee. So that works out nicely.
It does. We're all lucky.
Yes, you have no idea. So my other question then is, or I guess just to summarize, so the decision to make an alteration to what was adopted, what was presented as we adopted the bond was made out of curriculum instruction. Is that sort of what's the process going to be as changes are made to what we passed, what we presented to the public as a part of the bond? What's that process going to be, and how will we find out about those changes, and where are those decisions made?
Yeah. And I will say the recommendation was simply based on space and better use of the space based on membership. There are more young people in ILP, so therefore the larger facility, Saratoga. But that recommendation then went to a committee. Committee reviewed it and is bringing it back for your review. But we were just looking at best use of space, good use of the taxpayers' facilities.
Well, but it's an information item. It's not an action item. So it's brought back for board review, but not for board action. So I'm just trying to get my head around, it was presented, but I bet somebody else has something on.
Ms. Williams.
Well, first, Mrs. Fay, I actually had the same questions, just because I had been hearing different things. So I really tasked the superintendent to kind of get that information to us, because I think we should be in the loop. So, I guess once we start on the SSRR committee, I think we'll be able to have more of that conversation and bring that back. But for me, it was kind of oh wait, when is this going to happen? Why do we not know this? So I think that's why we're having the communication now. And for me, it was a big deal. But I do have a quick question about the ILP. So we're moving all of the ILP classes to Saratoga. Is that the recommendation?
Yeah, that's the one that the committee is presenting to you, correct?
Okay, because they're at how many locations currently?
They're at one location, which is the old Druid Hill off 30th Street. I'm sure you know the building.
I guess I was thinking of another program then.
Mr. Wayne.
I'm actually very concerned about this because, as Mrs. Fay said in the previous meeting, Ms. Williams said that we went out and told the public we were going to do X, Y, and Z, and we did say it was going to be fluid, and some things may change. Hence, CBOCs were created, and I reviewed everything on CBOC. I sit on that committee, and this never came before that committee either. We're in phase one of 2 phases, but if we can't, and I'm just saying generally, if we can't get the communication throughout the board, I'm very concerned of how we're going to communicate to the community. We're making a decision, or it seems like the decision's been made because we haven't voted on this without community input, whether they in that area want that to be used for that building or what alternatives could be used. I'm just concerned that this is just the first part of phase 1, and we're already repurposing and moving things around, and we don't know about it. This is very concerning because I still have questions. That's why I was asking who else was presenting, because I have questions for Jacobs regarding funding that I can't seem to get an answer from. And so I really need, and I'm going to take this time to ask this question. It doesn't pertain to you, but somebody from Jacobs that, and I'm going to use Northwest, and I sent this email out, and I still haven't got a clear answer on the differences. We told the public we were going to give Northwest $14 million. There's a design fee and a contingency fee, which I understand, but their only construction is $8 million, so we're still missing $3 million somewhere. And I know Jacob's contract isn't $3 million because it was only 2% of the entire contract. So I'm getting those questions from the public. I've asked those questions, and I'm not getting the answer to where the other $3 million is. And it's not just Northwest, it's every school in the school district. When you look at the CBOC report, it's about $1 million difference or a little bit more. And I'm still concerned about what is the design fee, because we hire an architect to say at Northwest, but they don't get the design fee. So where does that design fee go? And those are questions that I've sent to Mr. Ray, and Mr. Ray sent to Jacobs, but we still haven't got a clear answer. And now this lapse in communication is very concerning. So I don't know how we resolve it, but I'll be happy to sit down and do what we can. But I'm a little confused by the new committee if we have the CBOC. Shouldn't CBOC be handling all the bond stuff as it relates, because you have 3 people on that committee, 3 board members on that committee? So we're going to have dual committees from the board handling the bond?
No, the new committee is not for bond. The new committee is programmatic, so it will be looking at programs and then making recommendations. So it's things like magnet programs and alternative programs and those types of things, which are separate from the bond. They may come back and make a recommendation. Is that not the committee you're talking about?
So I'll clarify that for you, Mr. Ray.
It's the Specialty School Review and Recommendations Committee, and they look exactly what Mrs. Gotting talked about. It's programs. So programs like ILP, Parish, magnet schools. That's specifically what that committee will be looking at.
And that'll eventually affect the bond. So where will CBOC fit into this? Because we promised the committee that the community that CBOC would have a say in how we change and move things. So I just want to make sure we're connecting all the pieces.
I would see that this group does specifically more with programs, and a question did come up at CBOC specific to programs, and so as we work through this, we'll have to inform CBOC as well, or at least update them on any program changes.
And Mr. Evans.
Just a quick note, I think on the Saratoga facility, we can run that through the specialty committee too and let them look at it. I guess, and I'll have to pick up the documents on CBOC again, I don't think that was part of the original mission and vision that they did the programmatic pieces. I didn't think that was it, but I'll double check on their definition. I thought their main thing they were looking at is, 1, are we doing what we told the voters we'd do with the construction? Are all the construction projects happening that we said we'd do? 2, are we on time and under budget? I mean, those are the big things. Are you staying on time and under budget? I thought those were the primary pieces, but I'll double check on that. I know there's a statement of purpose. Maybe there is a program piece to it. I don't know that they have a program piece, but I'll double check that.
And Ms. Williams.
Mr. Wayne, can I just make a clarification? So we were talking about, the committee that you're talking about, are you talking about this facility and program use committee, or are you talking about the specialty schools? I can't remember what the RR stands for ever. I don't know why.
What?
Review and recommendations. So are you, I mean, I guess if we're talking about CBOC, then this FPUC would be information that would come to CBOC.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm agreeing with you on
okay. I just wanted to, because I think the different committees, acronyms and everything was a little confusing.
Agreed.
So I want to make sure that we're on the same page. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll have Mr. Evans take a look at the CBOC piece, and then I don't know if you can answer at this time the question that Mr. Wayne had related to bond. And I do...
Let me clarify. Yeah, I don't need the answer now. Just somebody can get back to me.
Okay.
And so we can get out to the board.
But I do think that one of the things that happened was, so the bond is about work that needs to be done, not a dollar amount. So we didn't tell voters we were going to spend a specific dollar amount. We were going to do work, and we assumed it would cost X for each of those projects. So I think that's maybe part of it. But I don't know if you have anything to add, or Ms. Merica?
Mr. Ray just asked me a similar question. I am working on a document to clarify specifically what the conversation I think is about is program budget, which there's very specific line items that make up a program budget, and then there's the project budget that's a component of the overall program budget. So all the dollars are still there. We have all, incrementally into what account code they would go into, and we can show on Northwest or any particular project, here is where all of those dollars reside, where they're currently at in the accounts that are associated with them. And then inside of the account it is for program contingency. As an example, we would allocate program contingency into a project budget account to spend from there. We wouldn't spend it from the program level. So I'm working on a document that provides what account is what type of dollars go in it, and how we would utilize that inside of the bond program. So I'm just putting some final edits on it. Wanted to make sure that it was not in construction. I wanted to make sure it was the appropriate language, because there are a lot of different accounts that make up $421 million. So we want to make sure we can trail all of those cents.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Ms. Williams.
I'm sorry, I have one more question for Mr. Schmidt-Bonney or Dr. Kerberg. I'm just curious, as we're talking about this FPUC, I'm not going to remember all of these acronyms for all this stuff. I'm struggling. I need a sticky note. Who's sitting on that committee? Is it all staff? And could you, or Dr. Kerberg, could you all send the board a list of who sits on that? I mean, I guess for me, it's not being aware of the committee, and I mean, it's so integral to so many other pieces that we're doing. It would be nice to figure out who is sitting on that, so if we have questions, we can ask those questions.
Indeed.
So,
as the chair of the committee, I'd be happy to send that list to you.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Okay, great. So we'll get that list. We'll get some information from Jacobs. We'll hear back on the CBOC piece, making sure that they're informed on, probably just informed as we make changes as well on items. And is that it from the takeaways? And Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Madam President. Just one other quick moving target piece is student assignment plan. That also will need to be run through some of the committees and updated with CBOC as that process moves forward, because that might have implications for where the students go, and obviously then the work that's done at buildings, depending on how those final decisions are made. So we're also anxiously waiting for movement on that. I mean, we've got some projects that will be greatly impacted by the student assignment plan. So we've got several moving parts that are natural and inherent to all the changes that are a part of those multiple issues that the board's taken, which, by the way, are significant issues. I think you've been looking at the student assignment plan for 10 months, 11 months, 12, so keep going up. So these are big issues, but they all have implications that will need to be run through, and I'm certainly happy with running through CBOC what other pieces come out of the SSR committee or any other committee, and I think they should be updated on all that. And if the board wants to change their role to be programmed too, I mean, that's always the board's will if they want to. But I don't think that's what we told the CBOC folks they would be doing. But I'll double check on that. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Fay.
I just, when we talk about programs as a school board, I think we're talking about one thing, and I just want to clarify, when you talk about program, you use that word in a completely different way, yes. So the FPUC, Facility Program Use Committee, the P, it's your P, not our P? No. I was so close. Okay. I'll figure this out and report back at the next meeting.
Very good. With that, we will move on to committees of the Board of Education. And I think we just have a couple of updates. So I will give an update on the Communications
for about a decade. It's just been renamed.
Committee.
But Carla used to
Ms. Williams and I met with Mr. Andrews and Mr. Dixon and Mr. Evans to go over just some general things. So at our first meeting, we talked about internal communication. We talked about the communications audit that was really done before we all came onto board. And Mr. Andrews shared that he's already addressed 44 items, I believe. He's going to correct me. Oh, over 50 items that were on that communications audit to be addressed, so he's been working on that. We talked about the fact that on the Tuesday after a board meeting, there is a staff post to let folks know what was discussed at the board meeting. Staff is currently investigating a customer service central office software option, so that's being talked about. Staff is also working on an internal e-newsletter to share with staff internally things that are happening. They are developing a project management software for tracking various projects that are taking place in the district. Mr. Andrews also shared that I think we've had 1.6 million website visitors, well, 1.6 million hits in the last year. We discussed moving, if as money's available, taking a look at, and resources, an app for parents, students, and staff to be able to have access to on their phones related to all kinds of school and district information. We discussed relooking at district-wide standards on phone messages and when phone messages go out. We also talked about board communication, so we know that at our next meeting we'll work on some ideas on board communication with the public, a potential podcast after board meetings to let the public know what's happening at board meetings. And then we also have, as a future item, the plan to work on the board handbook and address board-specific issues related to the communications audit. So those were the items that we covered on that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Scanlon, who's going to give an update on the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee.
The Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, or CBOC, we met March 25th of last month, and we had, that was our second meeting. The first meeting was in February, just kind of a, everybody introduced themselves, kind of came up with what exactly is the purpose of, what is OPS looking for input-wise from the CBOC and community members. The second one started getting into some program reports by phase, program reports by school, and school summary report. Had some interactive conversations with the with committee members that wanted to see some columns added to the different reports in order to better track projects. There were discussions, much like we had tonight, of the program budget versus the project budget, so they're working to clarify that. I think that's it's difficult to understand across the board for a lot of different people in the terminology, so that the multiple different reports will do what we can to make sure that they're clear and everybody's talking the same lingo as far as program versus project and dollar amounts. So they also, Jacobs also provided us with a master schedule review. Currently, as was discussed earlier, there aren't a whole lot of projects that are underway. A lot of them are in the design or procurement phase. So, you know, as with the bond slowly starting, there isn't a ton of information to give to the CBOC for review for actual project, but as we get moving, there'll be more information, and then we can also talk about the CBOC wanted to present to the board, so we'll hear directly from committee members that are from the community. Some committee members didn't want present OPS present OPS employees or even past OPS employees presenting. They wanted to make sure that it was a completely third-party look with, they don't have any ties directly to OPS as an organization, employment. So also, Jacobs gave an update on the economic inclusion, so the CBOC was made aware of that. And I think the presenting to the board was kind of at the end of the meeting, so it was just starting to be discussed. But I think what would probably be best would be initially to start reporting by CBOC members to the board on a quarterly basis, and then as the projects ramp up and there's more going on, looking at doing it maybe once a month or once every other month, just kind of figure out what makes sense to provide useful information to the board. And that's my report.
Thank you. Does anybody have any specific questions? Okay, we will move on to J1C, Collaborating for Equity Grant.
Thank you, board members. I'm Kimberly McMiniman, and I'm the new program manager for CFE, Ms. Williams. You're going to learn some new terms, Collaborating for Equity. And we have many representatives here collaborating tonight. We have two principals, Mr. Deco John Baptiste from Franklin. You want to raise your hand, Matt Williams, come on up. We have representatives from Highland, Michelle Ryan, Nikki Kershaw from Field Club, Diane Lee from Sherman, and Ms. Push from Mount View. So many representatives tonight. They are called ILTs, Instructional Leadership Teams from our grant schools. We are so happy. I know you had a longer presentation last year with Dr. Huber. And so just a brief update of where we're at now. We are in currently year 4 of a 5-year grant through the National Education Association Foundation, along with another partner, the Sherwood Foundation. So Mr. Jerry Bexton is here. And we also are represented with Mr. Willie Barney with the Empowerment Network, so we appreciate those outside sources. We have a grand total now of 9 schools on the grant. The grant started with 3 schools, as you know. We moved to 6, and we just now recently this year onboarded Druid Hill, Skinner, and Walnut Hill. And so they're in the very first few weeks. They're kind of like me, just being on the grant brand new this year. So we're looking forward to working with them. We are just working on our daily operations, and I'll let them speak a few minutes about what those are. But a big task this year in year 4 is starting to develop a sustainability plan. And as you know with that, there's lots of components from budget to data to personnel, many areas that we need to start talking about. And the steering committee, the project management team, and the input from our teachers and the OEA, Mr. Chris Prue, are developing that plan to share with Mr. Evans and then with you eventually to look at where this grant could possibly go in year 6 and beyond. Next year will be our last year for funding. Do you have anything you'd like to say? Okay. We'll let them talk. All right. So at this time, they do the majority of the work. They're the ones living it every single day. The ILT, the Instructional Leadership Teams, meet weekly, either before school or after school, and the principals are a part of that. They meet monthly with the project management team at the OEA office, and you are all invited and will be made aware of all the dates here. We will have a 1-week Teacher Summer Institute, July 6th through the 10th, and the teachers lead that workshop the entire time. We are inviting the board, the steering committee, community members, and the executive directors to attend, so we're trying to get a lot of collaboration going there. So without further ado, I will have the principal from Franklin and Highland and Mount View come up.
Good evening. My name is Deco Jean Baptiste, principal at Franklin Elementary School. What the grant has been able to do for Franklin Elementary School is it has provided us an opportunity to have a more instructionally collaborative team. We do meet every Friday, 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, and it gives us an opportunity to voice concerns. It gives teachers an opportunity to have a voice in instructional matters that are taking place in the building. And because those teachers have that voice, we've seen improvement in student achievement through the professional development that they've requested. And many times they put on professional development for their staff members as well. For myself, it's allowed me to grow as a professional, because now I have an in-house group of individuals who I consider to be my colleagues to bounce ideas off of, get their feedback on what's working and what's not working. It has also provided me an opportunity to work with other principals in a more collaborative effort. So that way, I don't feel as if I'm the only one out there. And so because of the grant, because of the opportunities it has provided, Franklin Elementary School is growing. Thank you.
Hello, Matt Williams from Mountain View Elementary. There's 4 pillars to this grant. They are relational trust, instructional practices, family and community involvement, and then teacher leadership, and then district and union collaboration. The key to this grant is using relational trust at the foundation of it. None of the other things are really new. We've been working on those for years. But relational trust at the base of it is the key to this grant. Being able to have a deep discussion, to even argue different points of view around increasing student achievement, and being able to hold each other accountable for our actions, then collaborating and learning from each other, really allows us to increase our instructional practices, family and community involvement, and then that teacher leadership with that collaboration at the district and OEA level. This grant has allowed us to begin building that trust. The benefits are already noticeable. I'm excited for our future when we've truly built that trust at a deep level to see really what we can get to with instructional practices and those things with that relational trust. So, thank you.
Hello, I'm Michelle Ryan, and I am the literacy facilitator at Highland. I've had the opportunity to be a part of this grant from the beginning, and I would just say one of the things that is really provided for us is the opportunity for our teachers to build as teacher leaders and to become able to support one another in a very professional manner, and being able to work together even though you may not have the same thought processes, being able to work through that and being able to be true collaborators, not just being collegial in our work together. Earlier today when I was talking to Gwen Foxall, my principal, about what I was going to say, because it's always best to clear that with your principal first. One of the things she said really stuck out to me was this has really caused us to have more awareness of what we are doing, and with that awareness then also causes us to reflect, and reflection then also causes us to grow as professionals, and I've seen that with my colleagues and with myself, so this has been a great opportunity for us.
Good evening. I'm Nikki Kershaw. I'm the instructional facilitator at Field Club Elementary School. We have our ILT meetings once a week. It was this morning at 7:30, so it's been a very long day for me. And I just will reiterate what my colleagues had just said, is really the teachers being able to build their professional development, not just in-house to see what our students' needs are and our teachers' needs are, but also funneling it down to the grade levels as well has been very important for us to look at that data and then come back and see what we need to do to support our students academically. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Christensen. I'm what's called the TLC, the Teacher Leadership Coach. I work specifically with the ILTs, the instructional leadership teams at the buildings, and working with them and making sure that they follow the goals and precepts of the grant. It has been an absolute joy to work with them, and we would like at this time to see if you have any questions about what we are doing with CFE. We did that great a job.
Does anyone have any questions specific to how this grant is working? Ms. Williams?
So it's more of thanking Chris Prue and Deku John Baptiste, I never get to call you by your whole name, and Mr. Matt Williams, in my work life working with them and in their building closely, but also as a board member, having the opportunity to go with them, to come into the school. I took a day and participated with the school and with all their staff, and I have to say it's made a difference just for me as kind of in my work life being a part of that team. And I've seen the difference, not just in the staff, but in the students. So the work that is going on at the schools is amazing, and it is having great impact. And so I just want to give kudos to the entire team for what you're doing. And I hope that this time next year we'll have not 3 more, but maybe 5 more. And I mean, really growing what you're doing, because what you're doing is really making impact with students. And to be able to see it on a daily basis and to be able to kind of testify to what you're doing. And I know there's days that aren't easy, but you still get through it, and encouraging your staff, and it's just amazing things that are happening. So thank you for your work, and thank you for inviting me into your plan and to be a part of that, because it's easy to sit here and talk about it when I have the opportunity to live it with you. So thank you very much.
I have one question. I have one comment before that, and that is I got to spend some time with the Field Club. instructional leadership team, and I was very impressed with just the depth of work being done in that particular school related to the grant work. So pretty exciting. How are the schools selected as we brought on the different cohorts? Was there a methodology for that? Just curious.
Yes, I laugh because that process has changed for the better. It was kind of a crash course in figuring a lot of this stuff out, and where we're at now is we're looking for schools who there is a demonstrable need in terms of student achievement, but even just as important, we're looking for schools that have an established level of collaboration, of relational trust that's established, because we don't want to try to build from scratch. But we understand that there's a lot of schools that are doing some good things, and they need the support to help codify what they're doing, and that helps them build upon it. So that was a big part of why we chose Sherman and Mountain View, and who else was last year? And King Elementary, and then this year adding Druid Hill, Skinner, and Walnut Hill, is because they are doing some good things, and they do have administrators who are helping try to build those things. But we've found that with the work that we're doing, that adding this component in there helps them put some more light onto the things that they're doing well and help them get a little bit better grounded in it. And as Mr. Williams said, that's such a huge foundational component to being able to build your school up, and so it's really inspiring to hear a principal acknowledge that that's a real key foundational support for moving this work. So,
thank you. Are there any other questions from anyone? Okay. Oh, Tony.
Thank you very much. I was particularly pleased to see the growth in student achievement that we're seeing across different schools. I know we're still going to have research look more deeply at that, and so that we can look more longitudinally over both cohorts and see the impact. Obviously, it's not the only factor that contributes to state test scores. It's nice to see that it's having an impact. I was particularly impressed by the OPS climate survey and seeing that that's a piece of data that you're utilizing to show impact. It would be great, I'm not sure, as a follow-up, to learn more around what improvement has looked like in the climate survey, given that I'm assuming it's like an anonymous survey that's given to staff or given to the individuals that are part of this, that are on different components of school climate, that can give us more information on making the qualitative quantitative. But I think it's amazing to see all the open-ended responses, but it'd be really great to see improvements in specific sub-areas that you feel warrant elevating and demonstrating to others. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, we will move to J1D Wakanda update, and Dr. Chisholm. And Ms. Bergen.
Thank you, President Gotting, Superintendent Evans, and members of the board. My purpose here tonight is just to give the board and the public an update on where we're at with Wakanda. I've included tonight for you to look at. As of 2 weeks ago, we received some updates from the federal government around the Wakanda, around state grants in general, so I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of that. And the ones particularly that I want to draw your attention to that affect Wakanda is the grant has moved from 3 to 5 years for buildings that apply. And two of the key functions around those 5 years, they have two avenues that basically you can take. The first one says that you can do 5 years, with the first year being a planning year, followed by 3 years of implementation, and then one optional year, well, 1 year after that, basically to sustain whatever it is that you've implemented. And then the other one is 5 years, with the first 3 years being the implementation and the last 2 years being sustainability. Looking at that, Wakanda will now be a 5-year grant moving forward. And looking at one other thing kind of moving forward is also the timelines. Right now, the new application has actually not been out yet. So if you're looking at that, the application will not be available until April 16th. So at that time, we've actually been working on an old document, but we will update everything on the new document, and we'll be submitting that by June 1st for approval. So those are just a couple of the timelines that I wanted to point out. Some of the other things that are mentioned down at the bottom of the document that don't affect Wakanda, as they've also added some additional models that are available to districts as well, so I just want to draw that to your attention. So just to kind of update you on where we're at with Wakanda, I have been working closely with Mr. Gehring as well as other district level people around Wakanda and the SIG grant. Basically, today we met with Wakanda staff and teachers, Wakanda teachers, the SIG committee, and we went over where we're at with the application. We actually showed it to them and made sure, most importantly, that it reflects what came out of our conversation with them when we met. And the good thing is Mr. Evans actually had an opportunity to join us, but the teachers said that they were very appreciative of how Mrs. Perkins captured everything that they said in the time that we met. And they were very excited about the things that were included. So moving forward, like I said, we will be coming back to show the board what we come up with once the new application is out, once we know exactly what changes we'll have to make, given what the new application calls for. Some of the other things that we are doing is I do have a visit planned this week to go to Lincoln to view some of their programs around what they've done with culture and changing things with their transformation model. So I will be visiting there with a couple of teachers from Wakanda, as well as Danita Webb from Title I, and a couple of the fellow EDs might be going as well to do that. So we're continuing to work with some of the other districts as well that have been doing some of this work. Phase 1 has already started with Wakanda, is that we have been working with PROACT to actively search for a principal, nationwide search. So we are excited to get some names back so that we can begin that process. We're hoping to receive about 9 to 10 names back to kind of look through to start that process. And some of the qualities that we'll be looking for with the principal were actually garnered from multiple resources that I've been looking at around quality principals with that. So we've actually been using that as part of the process, but we'll be looking for someone who maybe has had some experience with turnaround, but also looking at their ability to drive results, problem solving, teamwork and cooperation, and also that conceptual thinking are some of the qualities that we'll be looking for. And then lastly, we are going to begin our phase 2 after we have that principal in place, which will be involving around marketing for the SIG grant. So I actually have a lovely brochure for all of you board members tonight that we've already created to get that going. And basically after that, we will also be looking at the application process. I've already met with the Wakanda staff around teachers that wanted to reapply to stay at Wakanda. So one of the things that I will be doing after we have a principal in place is following up with them around the process of interviewing and how that will all take place. So that's my update. Are there any questions?
Mrs. Fay.
Well, thank you for that.
No problem.
So with that extra year, is Wakanda taking advantage of that 5-year plan where we have the year to plan? Is that since I know it was kind of a rushed timeline anyway?
It was a rushed timeline, yes. And I think with the approach with Wakanda, we are phasing some things in regards to the technology, but I think we're going to go with more using those back years for sustainability. So looking at the first 3 years, using that, implementing right away, but making sure that we are strategic around how quickly we implement some of those things. So we'll really be doing something a little bit different with that Wakanda, but making sure we have those 2 years that we could sustain whatever it is that we implement at that building.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Wayne.
My question is around, kind of along the lines of Mrs. Fay. When this vote came down, there was a 5-4 vote, and many people were concerned about the timeline. And now that the government has given us a planning year, I want to know kind of the thought process of why not use this year as a planning year, as they're going to propose to do with 75 North. So I guess I'm somebody from district staff.
Oh yeah, I was about to say. And basically, as we processed it with the teachers and looking at just what Wakanda and what the teachers' feelings and thoughts were, they were really more wanting to, I don't want to say be aggressive, but really get started with the process of looking at culture shift and how we can actually start doing some things right away. What this grant has actually allowed for us to do, though, is, like I said, some of those things with technology, we are going to scale back and do a phase plan of how we plan to implement. So I guess what I'm saying is parts of it will be planning, but there are other aspects that we want to start right away with the staff. So it's kind of a joint approach, I guess, is what I'm telling you.
Thank you. And so, with 75 North on the agenda today, when we were presented with this, we were talking about a different number of schools and how if there were more schools in the pot, there would be less money for that school. And I thought that was part of the thinking of why going with one school this year. How would that affect if the board approves today the 75 North project? Will Wakanda be potentially reduced in funding from the general pot?
We won't know the answer to that until we find out how many schools across the state of Nebraska participate. So we really don't know the exact amount right now anyway. I think what we're looking at, now we're kind of jumping past Wakanda here. So I don't know, do you want to stay on Wakanda, President Gotting?
Let's stick to Wakanda.
Stick to Wakanda and then come back?
And then we'll come back.
The question is, though, does this affect Wakanda? That's the question that is relevant to Wakanda update.
It might and it might not, because we don't know how many other schools across the state of Nebraska are going to participate in the grant. So we don't know exactly what Wakanda's amount will be.
Yeah.
Let me just add while I have the mic, President Gotting, just a note. I've had an opportunity to see the staff, the teachers really work hard on this, and I think I just want to give credit to all of them. Chris Prue from OEA was there today, and Mr. Vargas was with us yesterday. We had a really nice meeting, a quick lunch meeting. Appreciated your participation there, and folks have really stepped up to the plate, and I greatly appreciate that, because that's what's going to make this work, is the willingness for folks to work together, to see the vision together. That's where the power of this comes. It's kind of like the NEAF grant. What you heard was teachers and administrators collaborating together, creating that vision together, looking at research and identifying research and practice that they want to move forward with. So I thank Ms. Perkins and Dr. Chisholm for your effort to bring those players together, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make it successful, is that collaborative vision based on the research, based on best practice, but all of you buying into it. So I know we're going to continue learning on this journey together, but I think we're well on its way, and I appreciate all of you for the work you've done so far.
And I also want to take this time to thank Ms. Perkins, because she really, I've shared the document with Mr. Gehring, and he was really impressed with just the level of attention that she put to that. And just for her to be able to capture those things that the teachers were saying, I just want to also thank her, because I know that's a lot of work. So thank you to Ms. Perkins as well. Any other questions that I could answer?
Oh, Mr. Snow.
Thank you. Thank you for your work on this. So you're doing a national search for the principal, is that correct?
Yes.
So your principal needs to be innovative. It needs to be a turnaround principal for this model that we're creating. Do you feel that we'll be able to hire this principal in time for this school?
Honestly, I'm confident that we will, yes. Just given the aggressive approach and process that we're taking with this. I actually went online just to kind of take a look at it today before coming down here, and just the way that they laid it out, I'm very confident that they'll come back with some names that we can definitely look into.
And my other question, what makes this principal different from the other 85 principals in OPS?
What makes them different?
Yeah, flexibility, autonomy in their school. What will make them different?
I mean, honestly,
I want to
I
make
think-
sure that, we're talking about a turnaround school, that we're not going to have a principal that has to do the same. This principal has to be innovative, so are they doing the same exact things that all the other schools are doing?
So let me start with the first part, which is what makes them different. Much like you heard the principals that came up before talking about this grant, really what we're talking about is just the way leadership is changing. We're looking for an instructional leader that's about teamwork and working with the staff to move the effort forward. I think we have a lot of principals in our district that have those qualities. But I think just moving forward, when you're talking about this person being innovative and moving the work, it's really about the time commitment that we're talking about and making this happen. Working closely with that person around, working closely with the staff around specific areas with this grant, and working with district people coming in to help move these efforts. So I'm hoping, just knowing what Dr. Argetta has already went through with this process, that we're going to have somebody that's quality coming in.
So my last final question is, wouldn't you think it would be best if this principal had a year to prepare for this school? If we were hiring a principal, that you had a full year of planning for what they're going to implement in the school? Just technically, if you hire a principal, it's going to be summertime, and then they jump right into this, starting
Right. So, kind of as I mentioned to Mr. Wayne, there is some flexibility in this. So we do have some activities that we would plan this summer for this principal to get to know the staff. And it's no different really than any principal kind of coming into a new building. I think there will be obviously challenges with that, but I also think that those are challenges that we're willing to provide support around in order to move the efforts forward. So, our thing is going to be working with this principal around this document, the grant, and making sure that they're really comfortable around what's in there, but making sure that as we get going, that we do look at those phases. So what things are reasonable to do right away, what things are kind of imperative to moving that culture forward. Because one of the things that came out in our conversation with the teachers today is that they were strong about, we need a culture shift and a culture change in our building. We need things to happen.
So does the principal is the principal there for the selection of the 50% of teachers that
yes.
stay?
So that person will be.
Does the principal come in and get selected by the teachers that are already there?
No. So what happens is that process is the reason why we're not able to move on the teacher aspect yet is because we do need to have a principal in place that will be involved in the selection of the staff. So they will actually be involved in what staff members will remain at Wakanda, but then also what new staff members will be coming in. And they will also be an integral part of setting that culture and that climate. So what is the future vision of Wakanda and where are we hoping to go? So that's why we're needing kind of this first domino to get into place, which is because the most important part of this aspect is getting this principle right. If we land on the right person for the job, then it is going to move the rest of the work forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Vargas.
Thank you very much. Big thank you to both of you for writing the grant. It's not easy to write this grant application. It is a very arduous process. If people don't know already, this is, it can be a 100-page plus document, and it's very detailed, and it needs to be, because this is not something that local education agencies, districts, in our case, should take lightly. And we don't take it lightly. I was able to be in the planning meeting, so there were a couple questions I had, some mostly different actually, but I did have an opportunity to look at the Nebraska Department of Ed, and then they uploaded some new guidance from the Center School Turnaround, which I'm sure you're referencing, and I know that you've showed me that, and you showed me that you have that at your disposal. The first question was just first I do want to state, I think we should take advantage of this pre-planning year. There are not enough, if you're weighing the pros and cons, there isn't a I don't believe there are enough pros to warrant speeding this up, with the exception of, I think the major one being the sense of urgency and a culture shift, wanting to take advantage of that, but that requires a significant amount of planning, and planning with the school leader and teacher leaders at the school. And I think with more time, that will enable a school, the first one we'd be turning around, to be more readily be predisposed for success, especially since we have talked significant amount about using this as a model. I urge, and not only my board members, but the district, that we step back and use this pre-planning year as an opportunity to plan more effectively and even think about our long-term strategy, our internal district strategy for structuring school turnaround, and that's a key component. So that's one thing I'll say. The question I had was around, with this later hiring timeline, maybe for like teachers, that it's just the way where we are, and we can't really help it. How are we what's the new process for selecting these teachers to ensure we have the most highly effective teachers in this school to lead school turnaround? Yeah.
Dr. Garnett. So we're going to do a multi-tier process. They have their own application that's focused on 5 competencies. And we're going to name those because we want spontaneous interviews, not canned answers. Once we have our application, they're screened by a group of screeners. There will be a phone interview for the initial interview. Those individuals will then be selected to move on to the second tier. In that second tier, there's going to be a group-based interview in which they're going to work as a team. They're going to have some individual meetings with teachers and other individuals in that building. And then they will be decided whether or not they move on to phase 3. And in phase 3, they'll have an individual interview with the principal. They'll do a demonstration lesson in a classroom, and they'll meet with parents and students in that grade level in which they're going to be working. And we'll get feedback from that. They can bring resumes and portfolios as well.
Great. It'd be fantastic to include this into the grant application. I think I actually took this question straight from the Center of School Turnaround for the model that we're choosing to look into, and it's one of the questions that I want to make sure we have increased clarity around, because we are at a disadvantage by having a later hiring timeline, given just thinking about who is going to be applying. We need to fill this school with 50% new teachers, according to this. What's the pool of candidates we're pulling from? Even with this hiring timeline, we need to make sure we're having the highest quality candidates as possible for the school turnaround, and the hiring process is a key piece, so I appreciate that. In addition, what's the new process, or how is what you just said different from what we normally do, and what does this look like for the new school leader? Because we're hiring a new school leader really quickly. What's the new hiring process for our new school leader?
For them to hire teachers or to get the principal to be hired?
For our principal. What's the new hiring process for our principal?
So we're still working on that. So once that individual, we have a pool of people, we'll have a screening process there as well. And then hopefully a panel interview that's consistent of teachers, community people, the ED, individuals of that nature. And then they'll go into the school community and meet with that community, just like a community forum. And then a recommendation will be made as to who would best fit that school. So how is that different?
Yeah, how's that different from our previous hiring process for our school leaders, our principals?
I think the reason it's a little bit different is because we are going to bring a lot of different people at the table initially with that individual. And again, we'll do the same thing, screen through, phone interview to get an assessment of that person's skills and skill levels, and then move them to the panel interview with a lot of different stakeholders. We don't have teachers at the panel with the principal interview, and then they'll go into the community forum. And this time at the community forum, we would like students to be there along with their parents, along with teachers, along with business partners, and everyone that would be engaged in that school.
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that there is more community input. I still want to implore us to think more. Are we holding the highest bar possible for our first true school turnaround principal? And with this pre-implementation year, how is that going to enable us to have a more a better ramp up for this school leader? Even if they have some of the competencies, we want to make sure that they're capable to be able to take on this effectively and have the people around them support this. The third thing I wanted to ask was around what is our data collecting process to ensure we are measuring the quality of our candidates and using that to in turn help us shape our ongoing hiring processes, and also so we are using it to then help us predict what we should be screening for our next set of schools potentially that we are going to work on to turn around. How are we collecting data from each of these positions that is quantitative?
So, not to share everything with the candidates that might be out there listening,
we
are going to. We did have an opportunity to look at various toolkits. We looked at one from Learning Forward, and I think the other one was from the Wallace Foundation, and they had some competencies and some rubrics attached to that, some look-fors, some activities around the resume and the application, and we've designed that. And so we have some examples of that that we'll be using for this group of candidates. Today, they apply, they take the teacher insight, they interview with an HR representative, and then they move on to the building level. This one has more of, interviewing by phone, then moving into a group conversation around what they're doing at the building site, then coming back for that individual, and then there's the community interview with the parents and the students. So there's a lot more to the turnaround model.
That's great. I think my question is still around how is the data being, so is this data is it paper-based? Are we figuring out a way to document this sort of web-based, electronic-based data that we can then search and say, out of our 15 applicants, this was the average competency score for, driving to results, or for building team, or for respect and humility, and so are we doing something different like that? That's what I'm.
Well, everything would be on an Excel spreadsheet. Right now, we have not done anything web-based. If we did, it would go through our talent ed process. Right now, with the new application for this particular position or these positions at the school, we don't have time to put it in our talent ed system, which is building up the system. I don't have the technology background on it, but it would be something that in the future you would put into our already talent management system.
Got it. Okay, that's great. So that's my last question for right now. But that does get me to this issue of time. If we don't have the time to do it, and we need more time to build capacity for our district staff, and then also time to make sure that this is actually getting off the ground, and we're setting our school leaders up for success to do this, I think we should take advantage of the pre-implementation year, and we do need to think about a district strategy that enables us to collect data more comprehensively to guide what we do with our turnaround efforts and our hiring process for our new teachers and our school leaders for our turnaround efforts. I think that's something that I hope for the application. I know we talked about, I asked to include that in our application because that part's missing right now that you just described. So that's going to be implemented, I believe. Right. Correct?
Yeah. So I don't want to send the wrong message, because I do want to reiterate one of the things with looking at that new 5-year model is it's not to say that we have to implement everything right away. It's really working with that new principal and the staff when they come in around what things do we want to implement now and what things do we want to continue to plan around. So I think the reason why they have two options is it is flexible, and it depends on where you want to get the most bang for your buck. Where you're looking at, when I talked with the person at the state, he did say some people look at it as, okay, so whatever it is that we implement, we want to make sure on the back end we have a couple of years to make sure that we're really sustaining the good things that are happening. So it really comes around, in my mind, around having a discussion with the incoming principal and with that staff around what makes the most sense for Wakanda. So it's not to say that some aspects will be pushed aside, rushed ahead, because I do agree with you that we need to take a look at. But there are also some innovative things that are in there around staffing, some creative things that we're wanting to do that do make sense to start right away. So what I don't want to do is handicap the situation where there are some good things that could benefit kids right off the bat that we're putting on hold that could be done. So just to kind of state that it's not that we won't be planning at all, but it's just that there are some aspects to that grant that we've written in there that we think are imperative to do right away for kids, because we believe it'll make that difference right away. So that's just kind of to give you some background thought around that moving forward. So.
Great. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Not. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for your support through this process.
With that, we will move on to J2A. Oh, no. I'm going to, we're going to go to J2A, 75 North plan, or 75 North Kennedy plan.
Mrs. Godding, members of the board, I'd like to welcome several speakers to come forward to talk with you. As you know, this is a discussion that's been ongoing for quite some time. The first time it was presented to our Board of Education was October 20th. We were actually contacted several years prior to that. Dr. Moon was our superintendent at that time. And we have since had the chance to have board members visit and see Drew and what's going on in Atlanta. We have had a dozen meetings since that meeting on October 20th. We've engaged with teachers, we've engaged with community, we've had the OEA involved, we've had a steering committee, we've had input sessions, we've had community meetings, presentations, and we're pleased to come back with a very specific reform model. It's based on the purpose-built model. You'll see it has 8 components, and then in addition to that, we'll have co-presenting with Othello Meadows, Carol Naughton. You know Othello, he's our director of 75 North here in Omaha, and Executive Vice President Carol Naughton is with Purpose Built. Locally, we have a half-time supervisor who's also a half-time principal, Jennifer LeClaire, and she'll be talking about the components of the 8 proposed teacher school components, and then the SIG grant opportunity is also available for consideration for Kennedy, and Melissa Comine, our Executive Director of School Support for Kennedy, will be presenting that. So we will only highlight slides you've seen previously, but we'll cover new content as that comes up. So with that, I'd like to have Mr. Meadows begin.
All right. Thank you for having us back here again. Really glad to be here to talk about a concrete next step for Kennedy and the children of that neighborhood. Before I begin, I want to recognize a few people that are here that have supported us through this process. Brenshaw Development, our development partner, is here from Chicago, Rich Ortino and Ty Lieberman, and I really think that highlights the holistic nature of what we're doing. They thought it was important to be here, and so they're here with us today. Also have a couple of board members that are here with us. You heard from my board chair, Thomas Warren, and Susie Buffett is also here as a board member. I think Willie was being a little bit modest earlier when he talked about the way he feels about this project. It really was Willie's leadership that even introduced us to Carol and to Purpose Built. And so this story goes kind of back a long way with about 10 years of community engagement wrapped up in it. And also, I think the level of collaboration in this partnership has been remarkable. We've had a lot of people at the table, a lot of different opinions all coming together about what's best for kids. Chris Prue was really essential. I don't know where Chris is, but was really essential in bringing the teacher's perspective to the table as well, keeping that first and foremost in our mind. So I will run through this pretty quickly. You guys by this point are probably tired of hearing me talk about this project and how great I think it is. So I want to get down to some new material for you guys. At a high level, when we think about what this neighborhood is now, really it is a place that limits possibility. I won't go into these, but in short, all the high bars are bad and all the low bars are what should be good. So we're in a neighborhood that has a lot of challenges, but also a lot of assets, and we think that Kennedy can be a major cog in that wheel. You see how Highlander kind of envelops Kennedy. And we really wanted to make sure that there was a strong tie between the educational component and what we do in that neighborhood, and that those two are always linked. We won't dwell on this, but we're here because Kennedy is a persistently low-performing school. And the amount of attention and the amount of due diligence that this board has done to this point, I think is evidence of you guys' concern about raising these scores and raising these standards. Our whole mission really is to create a safe and active neighborhood where first and foremost children learn, and that starts with you guys, it starts with Kennedy. Families are healthy and community thrives. All those things are inextricably intertwined and can't be separated if we want to get the kind of impact that we're seeking. Just to bring you up to date about our progress outside of Kennedy, in the last month and a half or so, we've crossed some really major milestones. We've made it through planning and zoning, through the Planning and Zoning Board. We go before City Council for approval tomorrow. We have just secured a forward commitment from the City of Omaha for funding for the next 3 to 5 years. Our TIF financing application was approved by the city, which will help us pay for much of the infrastructure that are going to this neighborhood that isn't there now. And the first phase of this project is completely funded, which is really rare to be at that point at this juncture. So we still anticipate a groundbreaking in October or November of this year. So things are moving forward with all due haste, and we're really excited about the progress we're making, more excited to be here tonight. This is just a snapshot of our leadership and our board, really diverse board, 2 board members who are from very close to or in that actual neighborhood, from Curtis Marshall and Thomas Warren. This is just a snapshot of the catchment area and showing where kids come from. And we wanted to really highlight the fact that what we're doing is not just for people within that footprint, within the Highlander development footprint. It really is for this entire neighborhood, beyond whether or not you live in a new apartment or a new house that we build. One of the things that I really wanted to emphasize, and it's come out a couple of times in our steering committee meetings, I think this model is based on the fact that we can't ask schools, we can't ask teachers, we can't ask administrators to do this alone. We can't ask this school to be out here on this island and say, somehow magically raise these scores when we know that there are a plethora of other items that affect student performance and achievement. So really, we're not asking Kennedy to do it alone, and we're building this network of supports to wrap its arms around this school and say, hey, everything we're doing here is designed to increase performance, to support you, to help you be the best that you can possibly be. And so we think that's really a powerful image to make sure that we get across, is that we're not asking Kennedy to say, do it by yourself. One of the things that makes this go is partnership. And we've talked a lot about the partnership between 75 North and OPS. But there are a lot of other people, a lot of other players at the table that have a really vested interest in what happens in this neighborhood. From the mixed income housing with Brentshore and Habitat, to all the educational partners that we have at the table, BECI, Creighton, Metro, and of course OPS, all the way down to our health and wellness initiatives with the Urban League, with Charles Drew Health Center, and Creighton kind of fits in that component as well, in that bucket as well. So really it is a pretty powerful coalition of people that are coming together to say, what can we do if we do a really deep dive in this neighborhood? So the big idea really that we're here to talk to you about is that partnership between 75 North and OPS. And our entire philosophy, our entire reason for existing at 75 North is to ensure that this school and what happens in the community that we're building and that is surrounded by what we're building creates a place that is really a springboard to success rather than a hindrance to the same. So with that, we'll talk a little bit about how that's actually going to take place at an educational level. And so I think Jennifer is going to jump in here. Either one.
Hello. We're glad to be back. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the school proposal. And a lot of what you'll see is similar to what you saw when you visited Atlanta. As we look at the defining characteristics of the proposal that we're bringing to you tonight, it is closely aligned with the OPS strategic plan. As Othello said, it'll be part of that holistic neighborhood development. And as we used Drew and some of the components from Drew and then other schools in Omaha, you'll see that it's based on a proven model with extraordinary outcomes. Using an innovative approach with partners that will offer support before and after school and give us some wraparound services. If we look at the way that it aligns with the strategic plan, you can see that one of the goals is safe, healthy, and engaged students. We will anchor our revitalization in providing a place for students to be safe at school and outside of school. As far as high expectations, rigorous curriculum, and effective instruction, our model is grounded in research-based best practices, high expectations, rigorous instruction, that's carried out by a committed, diverse, and effective staff. Our model includes intensive professional development for the teachers, driven by the teachers, implemented by the teachers. We're excited about where Kennedy can be, which brings us to the goals for what we'd like to see in the future for Kennedy. One of our goals is that in 10 years, we're shooting for the stars here. So what we've said is that in 10 years, Kennedy in our neighborhood will perform among the top 15% of all public elementary schools in the state of Nebraska. We had we had a really healthy conversation at our steering committee meeting about, is this a realistic goal for us? And what we decided is that what's good for all kids is good for the kids at Kennedy, and absolutely this will be a goal for us, for the students at Kennedy, regardless of their free and reduced lunch status or what their home life is like. All students deserve to perform at that level, and we're confident that we can do that. The second goal kind of aligns with that. In 10 years, Kennedy will perform amongst the top 5 of all elementary schools in Nebraska serving those similar demographics. So the top 5% if you're looking at the demographic piece of it, but the top 15% irregardless of the demographics that they come for. We're confident that with the changes that we're proposing in the school, that can happen. This just talks about the innovative approach, and we've talked about this, so I'm going to move forward here. Again, we just wanted to highlight some of the partnerships that we'll be blessed with. And then we're going to kind of jump into the plan here, but I just want you to be confident. One of the things that we heard loud and clear from you was that we needed to take this to the community. We needed to talk to the staff that works with the students every day. We needed to talk with the parents at Kennedy, and we've done that. We've had we had a community meeting at Kennedy that was well attended. We had over, between 60 and 65 parents and community members there at the meeting. We met with the teachers and then put out a feedback survey to them that allowed them to give anonymous feedback through Office 365, actually. But so we were able to collect honest feedback from the teachers about what they wanted to see for the students at Kennedy. And all of those things are reflected in the plan that we're bringing to you today. So when we think about that plan, there are 8 essential elements, which you can see here. Number 1 being the highly effective school leader and staff. We know that the staff and the leadership create the culture, just like we were talking about for Wakanda in a building, and that will drive all of the success that the school has. So that will be number 1 for us. The other is the embedded professional development. Much of the feedback that we heard from the teachers was about, let us tell you what we need, give us training, and let us practice it, and let us learn from each other, and let us have time to do the things that you're asking us to do. And with this model, we'll be able to do that. The other thing is the strong focus on literacy. Obviously, literacy is key to the success of any student. So you'll see that embedded throughout the curriculum with a focus on helping students who are behind catch up through interventions. The other piece of that, or another component of this model, is the robust early learning program with a language foundation, which kind of ties to that literacy. So it's about talking to kids when they're young and giving them rich opportunities where they're embedded in language and learning from the time that they're babies, so that when they come to be school age, they're not behind. They can compete with any peer in any part of the state, which ties back to our big goal. Another piece of this is early and intentional interventions. So we know that sometimes students need help, and you'll see in a few slides what we have proposed for the interventions. But catch students early so that they aren't trying to catch up when they're in those intermediate grades. That we're going to build a foundation and catch them early. Another piece that we feel like is important is the STEAM and project-based learning. That will take some training for teachers because it requires a shift in pedagogy where you're being, I don't want to say thematic, but perhaps where you're working on a central project and incorporating and helping students learn reading and math and writing and language around a central topic. And then integrating your science and technology and engineering and arts and mathematics, all of those pieces together. So that will be a piece where the teacher said, we love this. We think that it will help students engage in school. We think that it will help them be interested in what they're learning, and that will help us to cut down on maybe some of those behaviors that we see, but we're going to need some training about what that might look like. And then lastly, the longer school day and school year. Giving teachers more time to have professional development and students more time to be in school. I guess not lastly. And then the last part, like Othello talked about, being part of that holistic neighborhood revitalization where some of those things that we ask teachers to do, be a social worker, be a nurse, all of those things that we want to do as teachers and as educators, we will have resources to help us do that job so that we can teach when we're at school. These slides just highlight some of those specific components that we feel like capture what the feedback that we got from teachers and parents in what they want. Starting with a school leader, someone who understands what good instruction is about. One of the things that the teachers said that they believe about a strong school leader is that they understand instruction. They know best practices. They're able to come to my classroom and coach me on what I am doing well or what I need to do differently. They're able to, I guess, talk the talk and walk the walk. So a strong instructional leader that can lead teachers and students to high levels of achievement. The ability to attract and develop teachers of the highest quality. And that kind of goes back to providing professional development for teachers, being able to have those conversations with teachers. Establish and maintain a climate of trust and collaboration with all stakeholders. One of the things that we heard loud and clear is it had to do with the climate of the building and setting high expectations. The teacher said, we have high expectations. We need a school-wide management plan. We need to communicate that vision of our kids' future to them. So we feel like that will be important for the school leader. And then thinking about the staff that the school leader works with, we would love, we feel like it's essential that we have master teachers that can lead all students to high levels of achievement. And part of the reason that they do that is because they are innovative and they're able to work in a team and collaborate and be flexible and do what's best for students. At the same time, having those high expectations and believing that students can and will achieve despite whatever limitations they may come with. And then building positive relationships with a diverse population. I think that goes back to that whole piece. Teachers asked for a consistent school-wide management plan where everybody knows the expectations and students are held to clear and consistent expectations. So we feel like with a leader and a staff that works together to plan these things, to create a common vision, to come up with a school-wide management plan, to have clear expectations, and then implement that with students, they will be successful. The next piece is that embedded professional development. I already said that teachers asked for that, and what's unique about this is that teachers will have, I guess not unique, but important for this is that teachers will have input about, we need this, we'd like to see this, I need help with this, and we'll be able to, I remember Mr. Vargas saying we should rely on some of the expertise that we already have in the building, and this allows for that, for teachers to teach each other about things that they're doing well, and get outside help or training about things that they'd like to try. So the other piece of that is that they have opportunities to do that daily. In the traditional school improvement plans that we have in buildings right now, it's like I work with my staff about every other week on professional development. These teachers will have opportunities for professional development daily so that they're able to like they asked. Try something or learn something new, implement it, come back and talk about it, tweak their practice, and continue to do that until they are masters at whatever they're learning. The strong focus on literacy, we talked about just the intensive literacy instruction that happens every day, and the programs to support students that are below grade level. The high-quality early learning opportunities will start at 6 weeks of age, focusing on that language and literacy, again, that we know is so important for students to be successful. And then the key piece to this is the seamless transition into that elementary environment so that students aren't coming to pre-K at Kennedy and then leaving to go to other schools. We want them to stay in that pipeline. The early and targeted interventions will use an RTI model where there's dedicated time to remediate students that need it through that literacy and math center that I'm sure you had an opportunity to tour when you were at Drew. And then we talked about the STEAM and project-based learning and how it's a pedagogy shift for teachers, but it is designed to help students build those 21st century learning skills where they're learning to collaborate and problem solve and do all of the things that will be expected from them in the future. The longer school day and school year that we're proposing will allow for that professional development and enrichment for students. We're asking that we add, or we're proposing that we add 5 additional staff days and 5 additional student days. That staff works from 7:30 to 4:30, while students are there from 8 o'clock until 4 o'clock. As we think about making these changes, we need to think about how that affects the budget at Kennedy. So if we look here, the new Kennedy will have key features for the reform and turnaround models. Like we said, additional staff, longer school day and school year. What we're asking is that OPS would commit to fund Kennedy using the financial equity model that the district uses currently. We propose that the early childhood costs for the 3- and 4-year-olds would be funded out of the Title I and Head Start budgets, and then potentially some grant funding that could make that program more robust. We would fund the infants and toddlers piece of the early childhood programming through potential grant funding. 75 North is still working, or is in conversations with some other nonprofits to look at how that would all be funded. Then 75 North would fund the gap between the financial equity model funding and the actual cost of the proposed changes. You can see at the bottom of the slide here that we put a few numbers to that. So we'll get to those in just a second. But what would happen then is they would fund the gap in fully for 5 years, and then after 5 years, OPS would be expected to kind of start to fill that gap with the expectation that by year 10, the costs of running Kennedy would be fully absorbed by OPS. So if we look at the timeline down below, in 2016, OPS would fund Kennedy using that financial equity model. Then 75 North would fund the estimated additional $1.7 million. Title I and Head Start would fund the 3- and 4-year-old classrooms at an estimated $1,052,194. And then grant funding would fund infant and toddler classrooms at an estimated $1.2 million plus some facility costs. And those are all things that are still being worked on in the planning phases. Then by 2022, OPS would begin to increase their funding to Kennedy by 20% for the next 5 years, while 75 North continues to fund the gap until in 2026, OPS would assume 100% of the costs. Do you have questions so far? Sorry.
Well, I'm just wondering, it might be easier just to finish and for all of us to keep track of our questions.
Okay.
And then that way, so I don't know how much longer to finish, but
Not much.
not much, okay.
Yeah.
Mrs. Leclerc did outline some of the budgetary considerations and a timeline. One of the things we also wanted you to take into consideration for the budget is the school improvement grant. The reason we are bringing this to you as an option is because the state has made us aware that there were some changes due to the SIG grant. But before we go into some of those changes, I do want to share with you that Kennedy Elementary School did make significant growth in achievement last school year. They were recognized as a Gold Award-winning school for having at least a 5% increase in 3 of those state areas. Although they made significant growth, they do remain in the bottom 5% of scores and achievement within the state of Nebraska. And as you know, the Nebraska Department of Education labels all of the schools in the bottom 5% as a Tier 1 PLAS, and those schools are also eligible for the SIG grant, or also referred to as the School Improvement Grant. We are recommending that Kennedy apply for the SIG Turnaround Model Grant, which would help fund some of the additional costs of the new programming and staffing at Kennedy, and this is due to the fact that the grant allows us to go from a 3-year to a 5-year and have that first year be that planning year. And so it does align with what we would like to do with the purpose-built model in 75 North. The state has approximately $2 million set aside awarded to schools for the SIG grants. The amount does vary. It can be as low as $50,000 per year up to 5 years, all the way up to $200,000 per year for 5 years. But also taking into consideration, that would be for if Wakanda and Kennedy both received the grant award. The OPS staff would submit a request for the highest award amount possible, and then the state would make the decision as to the amount the school would receive. The turnaround model requires the use of best OPS practices, the academic action plan, the strategic plan, and it is also the model selected for use at Wakanda. It does require that a new principal be hired, and up to 50% of the staff may be rehired. The other components of the SIG turnaround model align with existing OPS best practices, but also the national purpose-built best practices that we would be using with 75 North. And then you also see, as Mrs. Leclerc outlined before in those 8 essential elements, the other key changes in the purpose-built model that go beyond existing OPS best practices, and they are listed there for you.
Go ahead.
So as we think about our timeline and next steps, this is what we're proposing. We are proposing that in the next month or so, in May, we hire a permanent principal and an this should not say that, it should say assistant principal for 2015-16. While the principal, what we're proposing is that gives the principal and the staff a year to plan. So the principal would do a fellowship in Atlanta so that they could see the inner workings of Drew and how all of that embedded professional development and the multiple specials, all of that scheduling piece works, the intervention piece. So what we're proposing is that the principal would do a fellowship in Atlanta and be there first semester on a flexible schedule. Ideally, we'd like them to be there 3 or 4 days a week, but there'd be some flexibility in that. Once the principal was hired and they were able to work with Drew about how scheduling works best for them. And then the interim principal should be an assistant principal, would be hired for 2015-16 school year to support the building when the principal is in Atlanta. And then in September or October, once the principal has a feel for how things are running in Atlanta, kind of a feel for what the school should be like. What does it take to have a teacher that will be successful when you think about project-based learning and STEAM and all of the expectations of the model. Then we would begin interviewing and hiring teachers in September and October so that they have a staff that they can start planning with. And then from October to May, the principal and the staff would plan for that 16-17 school year, thinking about all of those things that we talked about. What do we want the culture of the building to be like? How are those interventions going to run? What are our project-based learning projects going to be? What do we want to focus on first for professional development? Who do we need to talk to about that? What will our school-wide management plan be? All of those pieces that it will take to make this successful will be planned from October to May with the staff that will be at the building when that school opens with the proposed model. And then the reconstituted Kennedy would open in August of 2016. So here's what we're asking. These are our requests. We request that you, as a board, support the conceptual plan that we've presented for Howard Kennedy beginning in the 2016-17 school year through the 2026-27 school year. The key elements would be highly effective school leader and staff, the student school day being from 8 o'clock until 4 o'clock. This is wrong too. School year with 5 additional student days and 5 additional teacher days. STEAM and project-based learning, the robust early learning, strong focus on literacy and language, and early and intentional interventions. We're asking that you approve permission for us to apply for the SIG grant using the turnaround model, hiring of a highly qualified permanent principal by May of 2015, high quality interim assistant principal to support the new principal by May of 2015. 75 North would participate in that principal selection process. We're asking that you approve authority for a newly hired permanent principal to staff key positions for the 2016-17 school year by September. And then those staff to have planning time available during this upcoming 2015-16 school year. And then there's the components again, the 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock schedule, 5 additional student days, 5 additional teacher days, and the STEAM and project-based learning emphasis. Now you have questions.
Yeah, now let's go to questions. So Mr. Snow, you raised your hand first, so I'll let you ask first.
Thank you. I'm sure you guys have been working on this for years, and the work here too tells. I just had a couple of questions. This one probably goes to any district staff. How much does it cost to run an elementary school? Total operating cost, you would think, staff and all. Is there a bundle number? 355 students, 350 students. I mean,
How about
what's the cost to run how much does it cost to run Kellum? I mean, just a number out there. Would you know? Anybody? $2.4. Think so. We'll say small. We'll say average. We'll say $3 million to 75 North. How much does it cost? And they'll probably go to purpose-built communities. How much does it cost to run Charles Drew?
The overall operating budget's close to like $19 million. It's about $10,000 a student.
Okay.
And that's K through 8, or pre-K through
Right now,
10?
that's pre-K through 10. But
Okay.
I think it's a good estimate of 10,000 a student.
10,000 a student. Okay.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Considering we were about to.
Ms. Williams and then Mr. Wayne.
going to go back to slide 22, because that's where my question lies. So I keep hearing about the early learning, which I'm a huge advocate for, along with the 75 North project. As a whole, I'm very supportive of that. But on slide 22.4, the robust early learning with language foundation, are we, when we're thinking about this, are we taking into account the current language barriers with the students and families at Kennedy? And do we have a plan for interpreters, or what's the plan? Because there's, I mean, yes, it's great to hit early learning, but what are we looking at? And maybe that's in the plan and maybe that's down the road, but are we looking at how we're going to tackle language barriers and really get those students caught up? Because that's going to be a #1 factor for this school.
Absolutely, and one of the main pieces of work that whoever's hired as the permanent principal is going to have to get down to right away is, you know, how do we serve such a diverse population? I'm trying to get to, if you look at just the demographics of the school, it bears your point out perfectly. But that's part of why that planning year is so essential. So I come in, I need to assess who's in my neighborhood, who's in my school, and how I best serve them. So whatever the ultimate strategy for early learning ends up developing, it'll all be done with an eye towards that reality there.
Well, and I say that, I only see one Kennedy staff, Ms. Harrington. Thank you for staying so late. I appreciate that. That's one thing that, you know, we're seeing is that right now we can't keep an interpreter there. The one that we had that was there was a mom and she had a baby, and so how are we going to take into account? I mean, and that's something that I'm really kind of posing to the district, because that's going to be our biggest challenges at the, I mean, if we're just looking at that group of students and those families right there right now, which I'm pretty sure most of those families are still going to be there. Mm-hmm. And if we're not able to accommodate translation and communications with families, how are we going to you know, and it's a bigger question, but it's something that needs to be said and that we need to start looking at.
We saw that for ourselves at our parent meetings.
Right.
You know, how do you keep up? How do you, you know, I was talking in 3 sentences at a time to make sure that the interpreter could keep up. So it's a very real problem, and I think it comes back down to that school leader. That has to be a priority. You know, every child, regardless of whatever their language barrier or their cultural differences are, has to be addressed and has to be treated as if they're the most special child in that building. So whoever that school leader is, I would just say that that's very high at the top of their priorities.
Okay. Again, I just know from my time being in that school, if there's no one to do it, you can't hire anyone to do it. And so for staff, it's being 10 steps ahead on that, finding those key, maybe it's parents that we hire, but start looking now and getting your feelers out now.
Sure. That's good feedback.
Mr. Wayne and Mrs. Fay.
Well, I think that I've seen, as you mentioned before, we've seen a lot of the pieces of this PowerPoint before, and the new pieces were very helpful. But the piece I hadn't seen was the additional 75 North draft budget, and it's an impressive document because it's at a level of planning and preparation that just says that you're really ready to do this, and you've thought about so many different elements. You know, I have a particular appreciation for the fact that there's a full-time vocal music band teacher, strings teacher, and art teacher. So, but I have a question, I think, actually for Ms. Perkins, and I'm just wondering if you can tell us what the average SIG grant has been in Nebraska. I'm trying to figure out the potential, as best as possible, what the potential impact on Wakanda would be applying for 2 SIG grants. So, I think you have to, I know, you need to, she knew. So I know that I mean, based on, while you're walking up here, based on one of the slides and one of the presentations, the maximum is 200,000 for a school. Is that correct?
No, the minimum is 50,000.
The minimum's 50.
An average grant usually runs anywhere from 198 to 200,000.
In Nebraska?
In
Okay,
Nebraska.
198 to 200 per year for now 5 years.
And that's just an average. And not for 5 years. We haven't seen the 5-year trend. We're only talking about the 3-year trend.
Oh, so it's the same pot of money, it's the same $2
The
million.
money hasn't changed.
Oh, so it's the same $2 million, but stretched out over 5 years.
That's
They didn't
correct.
increase the pot of money.
No.
Yeah, that's significant. I didn't recognize that. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wayne?
I have more of a comment. That information about the money not changing is critical for me, considering we had, as a board, a lot of conversations around Wakanda. We didn't quite get a unanimous vote there, but everybody, people attended the community meetings, and everybody's putting Wakanda in the SIG grant, and we're like the beacon of the SIG grant, and all staff who is part of the SIG is like dedicated to this, and I don't want to lose focus on that. And when I hear $2 million over 5 years, potentially in Nebraska, and we're talking $200,000 for a 3-year, I don't want to use SIG funding for this. I think it's time for the district to step up. If we can't find $300,000 in a $650 million budget, we have a bigger problem. This is important to our kids. So I want the SIG grant to be focused on Wakanda, and I want to get this project moving. We've been talking about it for a long time, so I guess I'm going to make a motion. I move to approve the Kennedy project as laid out before us, excluding the SIG grant funding, and directing staff to find minimum of $250,000 per year to fund this over the next 5 years and get this project started.
Hi, can I make a comment
Yes,
before you do
yeah.
that? Sorry.
Before we have a second, go ahead.
In the figures that you see here, I just want to clarify this before you vote. So in the figures that you see here, that 75 North funds the estimated additional $1,723,167. That's a commitment from 75 North before the SIG grant. So if we didn't apply for the SIG grant, that would be the money that we would need, that $1.7 million. So they've committed to fund that $1.7 million. Let's just use the $200,000, let's say Kennedy, we applied for the SIG grant, we got the $200,000. Then the amount that we would ask 75 North to commit would be $1.5 million. So we already have the commitment from 75 North to fund the gap using the financial equity without the district having to find that extra $300,000 is what I'm saying.
Let me clarify the motion. The SIG grant will roughly give us an additional $200,000 to put towards Kennedy project. And so I'm saying let's go $50,000 more, so exclude the SIG. Let's find $250,000 in our budget, and let's get this project moving regardless of SIG. Because for some reason, if we don't get the SIG grant, we got to come back and find a different funding source if we're basing this off of SIG. So let's exclude SIG, keep Wakanda the focus of SIG, and let's internally start funding this, because the other problem, well, I'll wait for the second and I'll come back and comment.
Well,
Second.
I have a question on that. I guess if it's already being funded by 75 North, why would we, so we were just going to reduce the amount of funding the 75 North was paying by applying for the SIG, correct?
Right.
Correct. So why would we go out and take money out of the general fund?
Can I make an amendment to the
I'm just
motion?
very confused about why we would do that.
That's why I wanted to clarify.
Yep, and I appreciate your clarification.
to answer the question, because I don't want to take any money away from Wakanda, and I don't want us to lose focus on, not saying we will, but to lose focus on Wakanda. If we're going to use $200,000 of SIG to offset the cost, I'm suggesting let's use $250 of our own general fund. And there's a second reason for that. In 5 years, the SIG money's gone, and we're supposed to increase funding by 20% according to the outline. That's a bigger cliff we're going to have to come up with in 5 years. So let us right now start building that sustainability today by putting $250,000 into it, and then start moving it forward, so in 5 years it's not a big jump to fund this.
Just a point of order, Mrs. Scotting, since I think, can we acknowledge the motion in the second? And
Yep. So there's a motion by Mr. Wayne and a second by Mrs. Fay.
Just so we can continue discussion. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Mr. Scanlon, did you have your hand up? Okay. Mr. Vargas.
Thank you. So I agree with this motion. I think this is, I don't want to take funding away from Wakanda. I think it brings up this really tricky, what we're not discussing is we're treating these two different projects as separate entities to a certain extent that would both be applying for SIG grants, when in reality we should be talking about being strategic about our district resources, so that how we can serve all of our turnaround schools effectively and in the same way, as opposed to treating them discretely differently. I think that this should be separate only because we need to have a more comprehensive district strategy for this and look at our own budget and how we're going to serve all of our school turnaround efforts going from here on in. And that we did have these first conversations with Wakanda, and it's a shorter timeline we're providing them with. We're more aggressive with that one, and that's what we had just discussed. And taking any potential money away from them, I think, would be unfair, because there's a limited pot, and I don't want to do that right now. So that's why I support the motion. I think it's a smart, makes sense.
Ms. Williams.
So I guess I looked at it as it would have been two separate motions. The SIG would be completely separate. I guess my challenge with the motion is the dollar amount and not the conceptual plan itself. I think the dollar amount should definitely be a different motion or a different piece for this, because I think we're blending everything in one motion, and it's kind of confusing. I'd rather have a conceptual plan, past that, and then look at the money piece separately.
May I comment on that?
Yes, and then
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Wayne.
The thing about it is and this is a historical perspective for me, we, and Mrs. Fay will recall this, adopted a lot of plans without putting money behind it. And we would always say we would come back to the money, and then sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. And so the purpose of making the plan with funding was to make sure that there is funding tied to this plan, and I'm actually increasing the amount by $50,000. One, so we can start building sustainability in a project within our budget, and two, we don't take away from Wakanda. So the reason I'm saying the motion was to adopt a plan that is presented before us, along with $250,000 excluding a SIG application, because I think we have to start building sustainability within ourselves, and I think any plan we adopt moving forward should have a funding component attached to it.
Ms. Williams.
I don't disagree with that, Mr. Wayne. I'm just asking that we do the plan, and then we can right now talk about budget dollars and do that in a separate motion. I just really believe that the concept plan for this school should stand alone, and then we can turn around and make a motion about the dollars. I just think blending them, for me, it's not confusing for me, but I think if we do that, it's confusing, and then you're trying to add all the pieces. If you do them back to back, I don't see there's any difference, but it's just we're approving this plan to move forward with Kennedy, and then we're approving this money to go towards Kennedy, however it looks, whether it's SIG, without SIG, whatever that looks like again.
Well, part of it is that when this was placed on the agenda, some board members had concerns about Wakanda, and it was raised here tonight. So as I was taking notes, I wrote the motion down as a way to make sure we had a unified vote on this project to send the right message, because there are some board members from the discussion who I think was concerned about if we put two plans out there and we're approved, we may take money away from Wakanda, who desperately needs it. Not saying Kennedy doesn't, but there's an entire partnership and community movement behind this Kennedy because of the long-term planning and the due diligence that we already heard about, and we're playing catch-up on Wakanda, and I don't want us to lose focus. So in my efforts sitting here, I think it was a way to, one, create sustainability, two, make sure that the board and some of the people that I heard ask questions about Wakanda and had some concerns would approve this project, and we can move forward in a united fashion.
Okay, so can I just ask one question? So I guess I want to get clarity because I've heard two different things. So did you make that motion because you were trying to take SIG off the table to avoid hurting Wakanda, or did you make the motion on the $250,000 to have the district put money into it that we otherwise weren't asked to put in because 75 North was funding it? So I want to understand what
the answer is both. I think it's important that we don't hurt Wakanda, but I think it's just as important that we begin to create sustainability. And again, the SIG grant, if approved, is for 5 years. If we have $100,000 for 5 years each year, after 5 years, that SIG money goes away, while at the same time, according to the outline, we're supposed to increase cost to our expenditures to Kennedy by 20%. That is a greater cliff than if we currently start budgeting right now a minimum of $200,000 or $250,000 was my motion, and begin to build sustainability into the project.
You could get more than that.
Mr. Vargas.
Yeah, so this is just echoing that. I'm definitely one of the individuals that Mr. Wayne was referencing. I wanted to make sure that in our efforts, especially sitting in on the meeting with Wakanda, and then remembering the voices of the teachers that were here, that we are providing a sufficient pool of money and resources to that team and the efforts that they're putting forward. And that, I don't want to put them at a disadvantage by putting more grant applications out from our district, therefore potentially creating less funds for Wakanda, when we don't have these additional organizations working with Wakanda currently like we do have for Kennedy. But at the same time, it's also because I think we need to take a critical eye at our district budget and our operations for school turnaround to make this work sustainable over the next several years. First, just one. Now we're talking about two. Earlier today we had community leaders talk, and I'm not going to reference this, but community leaders talk about, we need top-level teachers, we need top-level principals. As a district, we need a plan. We need to think really critical about our resources. I believe that was the board chair of 75 North project, and I agree with it. We need these resources. We need a plan. We need to reconstitute, what we do well, figure out and expand on those. That requires us looking at our district budget. That requires us thinking more strategically about how are we going to align these resources from our district more strategically to this work, as opposed to just relying on the grant. We should be applying for grants, but not in isolation and not looking at our district budget also as a strategy. So that's why I also think we should be looking for our district to do this $250,000. We should also be doing this for Wakanda as well. We should be looking at our budget and finding money within our budget to support this turnaround process for Wakanda, and not just on the grant process itself. I think we're doing that, but I think explicitly stating how much, that's a different story.
Mr. Ray, can you reread the motion, please?
Well, the first one, move to support the Kennedy plan presented excluding the SIG grant with the direction to staff to supply an additional $250,000 per year for 5 years. Is that correct, Mr. Wayne?
Okay, was there a second motion? Is that why you're...
The second one was Mrs. Fay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, second version?
No, the second.
Seconded the motion.
Yes, Justin motion, Marion second.
Ms. Williams?
So I would like to make an amendment to the motion, and I move to support the conceptual plan as presented for Howard Kennedy beginning in the 16-17 school year through 2026-27, excluding the SIG grant and the OPS dollars.
So is there a second on that motion? Yeah. Mrs. Neela Sprague.
No,
So she's made an amendment. So I'm going to call her up on Robert's rules just to make sure we follow. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Merrick. Can you explain?
So the amendment is on the floor, and it takes priority over the current motion on the floor. So it takes priority over the original motion made by Mr. Wayne.
Okay. So there's an amended motion. Mr. Scanlon.
Just a question about, we're talking about the potential of taking money away from Wakanda, but that, I guess I'd like some clarification. We could not apply for it, and then the state, or for Howard Kennedy, we could not apply for it, and then the state could say there's 3 or 4 applicants down in Lincoln, and they split that money up, and OPS misses out on money that they could have possibly gotten for 2 of the schools. I mean, there's no guarantee that we're, first of all, getting the SIG grant approved, and then second of all, what dollar amount. The state, that's the state's decision. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Scanlon, that's correct. Depends on how many schools apply. We have been in conversation with NDE and the representatives that work on these grants, so we feel some level of confidence, but no guarantee. And certainly no guarantee on the amount, because we don't know whether there's 2 or 3 other schools and school districts talking to the NDE about applying, or whether there's none and we're the only ones. Now my guess is, just looking at the history of it, that usually there is 2 to 3 to 4 schools that are going to be participating. That's our guess based on past history. But we don't know definitively, and we won't know definitively actually until June. So we have pretty good feelings about it based on the conversations, but not a guarantee.
Okay, Mr. Wayne.
And based on that answer, it's even more important to, in my opinion, vote the amendment down and stick with the budget requirement, because even if we don't get a SIG grant, then we're not committing any dollars out of our budget to this program. And I think if we're going to adopt a program or adopt a plan, we should commit dollars to it. And again, we're talking about $250,000 out of over a $650 million budget. Thank you.
What I think in a way we are committing, because it's part of our financial equity. So we're running the school, and that's committing quite a bit of money. Ms. Merica?
Okay, I know a couple of us have this question, and I cannot recall from previous meetings. Is there a maximum amount that can be awarded to a school under a SIG grant per year, and if so, what is that amount? Okay,
so Ms. Perkins just said, so I'll state it for the record, $666,000 over a 3-year period if you were the only one applying.
If you're the only one applying. Okay. And Justin, I understand Mr. Wayne, I understand what you're saying. However, you could phrase a second motion regarding the financials any way you wanted to.
you could phrase it to say, direct the district to apply for the SIG grant, and if that is not received, that the district commits this much in funding. That would give us flexibility to do that type of thing. I'm of the thought that I think if there's things available, we should try to apply for them. But I agree with separating it into two so that we can build in that flexibility.
Okay, so if there's no more discussion on that, Mr. Snow, I'm sorry.
Okay, so on top of that, Ms. Merica, there's only a certain amount of money in the pot. So even if 4 schools in Wakanda and Kennedy applied, Wakanda will not get as much because there's another school applying.
Well, but there's no guarantee we'd get anything.
I know, but once the state if I'm correct, if the state designates money to Wakanda and Kennedy, we can't move that money either way, can we? It has to go to that school. So that's my only thing on that.
Ms. Perkins is coming up, I'm not sure. She has something to say.
I'm just going to say that because we don't know, that is true, but we would probably be one of the first districts to apply for turnaround. Historically, everyone has applied for transformation. I'm going to say if we did as a district strike out and do something different no one else did, the likelihood of them giving us a little more money for that because it is something different, that could happen.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Williams.
The last thing, I just really wanted to, Mr. Wayne, I think you have that particular motion I think it's great, but I just really think it's more powerful if it stands alone, and you can note that X amount of dollars, if it's 250, if it's 500, whatever it is. I'm not saying I'm disagreeing with that. I'm just saying that I would like to see us do that separate so we can really focus on, yes, we have this plan. We support it. We're moving forward with that. And then making that second motion to say these are the dollars that we're requiring the district to come up with, per se. Because you're right. There's no guarantee we're going to get the SIG grant, and we should step up the dollars for that. But I just think my personal opinion is if we do that separate, then we know that, you know what, this is district dollars that will be focused on this school moving forward, with or without a SIG.
Okay, roll call on the amended motion.
Can he repeat it?
Can you repeat it? Sorry.
Motion to support the conceptual plan as presented for Howard Kennedy beginning in the 16-17 school year through the 26-27 school year.
Thank you. Roll call. Mrs. Fay?
I'm still trying to understand. Is the motion to support the plan with or without the SIG?
That's not being addressed. It's just the plan.
Just the plan. Okay. I wanted to clarify that.
And we're clarifying, this is the plan, but this is everything we've looked at. This is 20% each every year increase until 2022. This is basically everything in the PowerPoint presentation with the exception of applying for SIG. That's what we're saying.
Correct. It is. Hold on.
That's what makes this hard, because what we have in front of us is different. Conceptual plan define that.
But if the district decides to fund and not have North 75 fund that portion of whatever that 1.7 million is or whatever the number is, then that can be done through a separate motion.
I don't know if I'm still confused by that. I still don't know what we're saying is if what we was just present to us is the conceptual plan, or we're just talking about the conceptual plan of just the 75 North, what they've done so far and wanting to move forward. I'm still unsure, but.
So I think if you go to page 38, that's really what we're talking about, is that top part and the, everything except for that permission to apply for a SIG grant.
So that
And then
does
the-
include the equity model,
Which is what we
right,
currently
which we're
have.
currently doing.
Correct.
Are we doing that with Wakanda?
We do the equity
With all,
model in every
okay,
single
I wasn't
school.
sure. And then 20% increase every single year until 2022 or something like that? right?
26, 27.
20,